Two beings in the darkness, bored, were talking. Since the ceasefire they had made with the heavens, they had not moved much, even though battle was the very reason for their existence. But one of them had a hobby he could suggest to the other. Exactly, battle. Seated on a stone throne in his hall, the Dark Lord Helacion asked the young evil being in front of him if he had finished the preparations. The young one confirmed, letting him know they could start at any moment. Helacion then stood up and, walking with his cane, asked what Alterius's response had been. On his knees, the young one confirmed. He said he hopes you have fun. The lord with white hair and mustache stopped for a moment and then authorized the start of his plan. Standing up, the young evil being nodded at the orders and quickly used a displacement ability to leave his master alone. Helacion snapped his fingers, and before him appeared a reduced-scale planet. He was quite interested in watching the battles. In a hall, a young man in a battle uniform was waiting with his sword overflowing with energy. In front of him, the dark man who accompanied Helacion appeared. The young man saw that being as the only one left to defeat. Without caring about the expression of fury, the dark being released an energy in his hand with sharp claws while praising the boy. "It is necessary to congratulate you for managing to get this far as a human." Without caring about his words, the young man raised his sword, mockingly asking, "Will that bastard be even a little bit anxious if I eliminate you here?" The dark being was furious at such blasphemy. His exuded energy increased with the intention of punishing the human. He advanced like a lightning bolt of energy, crossing the distance between him and the young human instantly. However, the human already had his sword raised, prepared. In the face of that sword, the dark being scoffed. "Idiot." He stopped midway, gathering a large amount of energy in his hand, preparing his attack before the human. With his sword raised, the young knight challenged him to a frontal combat. Midway, the energies of the attack and the sword canceled each other out, surprising the dark being. Now, still possessing the power of the sword, the young man saw that it was his turn to attack. The sword strike fell on the dark being, and an explosion happened when both of their swords met. The blades scraped against each other, letting out sparks. The dark being gnashed his teeth, exerting force in the same way the human was concentrating. The human's sword pushed his opponents, making him smile in surprise. Unbelievable. Can a human possess so much power? Exploding his energy to the maximum, he threw the human far away, showing him what true power was. The young man managed to land safely and faced his enemy. Thus, he questioned, "Why humans?" Roaring, he questioned from the bottom of his heart, "Why do you do this to us?" The dark being smiled, leaving the young man shocked with the answer. "Do I need a reason to use inferior humans? Does that happen to seem illogical? Power is what defines logic, and the will of that being is absolute. That's why you can only accept and withdraw." Amidst the dark being's bravado, the human passed by him, carrying the sword, and delivered a strike that the dark being didn't even see when it happened. The dark being felt a tremendous pain as soon as he realized he had been hit. Coldly, the young man no longer wanted to listen or waste time, leaving his enemy to perish. The dark man was shocked to discover that he was never a match for the human. He tried to question where the boy had obtained such power, but was met with a cross attack. The attack landed on the dark being, who coughed heavily, unable to endure the impact. Upon seeing his enemy fall, the young man reminded him, "Didn't you say I should just accept?" On the ground, the dark being weakly smiled upon seeing that he had been caught. Despite that, he felt pity for the human, as he would not be a match for who he would encounter next. Thanking him for the warning, the young human delivered the mercy blow. In the center of the dark being's chest, the sword penetrated, and there, a crystal appeared. The young man took the crystal and immediately felt power surge within him. With the energy that overflowed in his body, he evolved his stats, reaching a new level. With a deep voice, the young man asked the wind, "What did you say about logic?" "I crushed that senseless thought, shoving it back into your back." With a severe look, he swore, "I will finish you, Dark Lord." When the sun seemed to hide behind the mountains that surrounded a forest, a goblin appeared. But from the tall grass, a young man with a dagger jumped on the goblin, attacking it. Having eliminated the small monster, the young man gasped, tired. Still, he had completed an achievement. Stopping to rest, he took out a cigarette. Sitting on a stone, he contemplated persistence. 4 months had passed since his arrival in that world, enough time for him to get used to the different, ugly, red sky. Suddenly he heard something and got up in a hurry, grabbing his dagger. He paid attention to the surrounding grass and, as he threw the cigarette behind him, he was met with an attack. The tip of an arrow grazed him, leaving a slight mark on his cheek. Gritting his teeth while trembling, he tried to discover the origin of the attack. Suddenly, from the tall grass, a man appeared. "Oh, it's you, Chamuyuk! I thought you were a monster, my apologies." Seeing the man scratching his ear, Muhyuk asked why he was there. Throwing the arrow away, the man replied with a mocking look. "Can't I hunt here? It's been a while since I've seen you, but your eyes have become sharp, haven't they? I could bleed from this." Showing the wound on his face, the young man questioned if the man had done that on purpose. The man tried to falsely explain himself, claiming he was just hunting goblins. He treated Cha Muhyuk's tattered appearance as if the young man was in difficulty, but returning. To his cigarette, Muhyuk told him not to worry. Exhaling the smoke, he commented, "You said you were hunting goblins and you're still here. It seems you're not trying to do anything but lie." Suddenly, Cha Muhyuk saw his cigarette being snatched from his mouth and crushed. Before he could understand what was happening, a closed fist hit his cheek. The man grabbed Cha Muhyuk by the collar of his shirt, warning in a cold voice, "How dare you smoke in front of your senior? It took me a long time to quit, and now you're spreading the smell everywhere." Mockingly, he asked, "Does a beggar goblin really have the luxury of smoking? If you're not crazy, then put that out. This is sincere advice from me, so be grateful, understood?" But the response was sharp. "I am grateful for it. But wait, did you buy my cigarettes to tell me what I have to do? Go mind your own business." Annoyed with the response, the man didn't let it slide, hitting the young man in the stomach. As Cha Muhyuk fell to his knees, he commented, "Since the first time we met, I had a bad feeling about you. Look how you dare to talk back to me. That arrogant face and all that bullshit you say, coming from someone so weak. There is absolutely nothing about you that I like." Lifting Cha Muhyuk, he attacked him once more to show who the powerful Bae Yongchul was. After the blow, Cha Muhyuk fell to his knees again. Bae Yongchul knelt down with a grim look. "I'll stop here, so be careful. If you see me, again, kneel as you are now, understood? You bastard." Smiling as he called Cha Muhyuk a loser, he walked away. After some time, Cha Muhyuk got up, wiping his mouth and ignoring what had happened. Putting a cigarette in his mouth while mocking Yongchul, he returned to what mattered. It was getting dark, so he needed to finish his service. Looking at the eliminated goblin on the ground, he snorted, "Are you laughing too? Despising me? Laugh while you can." However, the goblin could no longer respond. Thinking for a bit, Cha Muhyuk scratched his head. "I should have acted like this when I got involved with that gang." Sighing and grabbing the dagger, he knelt down and thus began the collection of items on the goblin. After some time, he counted the items he had collected. 6 eyes and some teeth, the necessary for selling. In this world, it was possible to sell specific parts of hunted monsters and get points. There were several ways to use them, the most important being exchanging them for money. In the point exchange, goblin items were at the bottom of the barrel. Only their eyes and teeth were sellable, and for a low amount. Getting them was already difficult, and their cost effectiveness was not great. However, even against them, Cha Muhyuk had some difficulty. He looked all around before moving to the next step, the reason for working hard. Before anyone approached, he took the goblin's heart, something extremely smelly. Goblins were the only monsters in the area, and even then, they only appeared sporadically. However, Cha Muhyuk discovered there was something in the hearts of some goblins. Upon opening the obtained item, Cha Muhyuk really found what he was looking for, something he hadn't seen in a while. That was the heart core. Cha Muhyuk took the small pearl in his hand and consumed it, throwing it into his mouth. The effect of the core was simple, to increase stats. Upon swallowing the core, Cha Muhyuk got goosebumps all over, not used to the taste and smell, even after consuming such cores multiple times. Absorbing the core, Cha Muhyuk's strength permanently increased by a small amount. He didn't feel the increase in strength immediately, but he knew it was there. The world he was in was similar to a game, as it had factors like stats and skills. But growth was not so simple. The methods were restricted, and the obstacles severe. Luckily, he managed to learn a method of growth with minimal effort, and this gave him the confidence to become stronger, fighting and devouring. This is how he would continue on a journey to escape that place. Cha Muhyuk swore to himself, "I will get my revenge on the bastard who threw me here." After his moment of protagonism, he went back to taking care of the goblin's body. Even though it was annoying, he needed to do it so that no one would discover clues about how he was becoming stronger. When night fell, Cha Muhyuk walked through the forest. Accustomed to this routine, he arrived at a wooden house and announced, "Professor, I've arrived." Lighting a lamp, he apologized for being late and, looking at his professor, informed him he would start preparing dinner. However, upon looking closer at his professor, Cha Muhyuk was scared. The man sitting with his head down didn't seem well at all. With a look of nervous fright, Cha Muhyuk ran to his professor, shaking him. "Professor Jongmin, are you okay?" However, receiving no response from the limp body, Cha Muhyuk understood what had happened and began to tear up in lament. But at that moment, the man with long white hair opened his mouth, yawning. Cha Muhyuk was relieved. relieved, thinking that something serious had happened to his professor, who, irritated, headbutted the disciple's forehead. Standing up, the professor complained, "You're too noisy. Why did you think I had departed from this world just because I was sleeping?" Cha Moo-hyuk tried to apologize, and soon heard the professor asking to start eating soon, as he was already hungry. Cha Moo-hyuk helped his professor, who only had one leg, to the table and, while preparing the food, apologized for the menu being the same as always. Relieved to be able to eat something, the professor opened his mouth and the young man extended the bread towards him so he could take a bite. Cha Moo-hyuk asked him to eat carefully, but the professor reminded him, "The faster I eat, the sooner you'll start eating too." After a few bottles of drink were emptied, Cha Moo-hyuk helped his professor light a cigarette. The two smoked together, resting. Smiling guiltily, the professor stated that Cha Moo-hyuk could simply throw him in the forest instead of working so hard to feed him, as he wouldn't blame him. Seeing how the professor treated himself as a burden, Cha Moo-hyuk questioned if, by any chance, he wanted to eat more. Laughing, the professor asked if he had found any cores, and Cha Moo-hyuk confirmed, smiling. The professor asked if he hadn't been caught, and Cha Moo-hyuk revealed that he consumed the core as soon as he found it, dealing with the goblin's body as well. Asking Cha Moo-hyuk not to get discovered, the professor reminded him, "This is a method only the two of us know." Stating that he would keep that in mind, Moo-hyuk helped the professor. Changing the subject, Cha Moo-hyuk commented, "I saw the tyrant sword Lee Seo-jun in the middle of the village this morning." Surprised, the professor thought there would only be one reason for Lee Seo-jun to be there, and Moo-hyuk confirmed, "He seems to have returned after visiting the eternally slumbering forest." That morning, upon going to the city, Moo-hyuk heard some people commenting about Lee Seo-jun. He looked in the pointed direction and found himself facing a man who carried a large sword. The knight, with spoils of beasts attached to his waist, marched arrogantly through the city. People watched and commented on how he had climbed to the top 300 in just 8 years since his arrival at Helacion. It was possible to see how strong he was. The 2 items at his waist would yield at least 2 million points. Many were confused and asked why someone of such a high level would be in Maudi. Someone more informed explained that it was necessary to pass through the city to reach the eternally slumbering forest, and that he might sell the spoils right there. Moo-hyuk had listened to all the conversations attentively. Thinking about the forest, he knew he would perish if he went there, and then he observed Lee Seo-jun, as well as the spoils at his waist. Moo-hyuk had heard from his professor that those monsters possessed cores, which made him wonder what would happen if he consumed a core of such a high level. Telling what had happened, Moo-hyuk commented to the professor how tempted he was to go to the forest. Leaning back in the chair, the professor commented, "The stronger the beasts, the more expensive they are sold, just like their cores. That bastard is incredible for hunting them." Laughing upon hearing how Lee Seo-jun treated the spoils as trophies, he returned to the main subject, ordering his disciple to be content with goblin cores, as there was still a long way to go. The professor reassured Cha Moo-hyuk, reminding him, "You'll get strong eventually. Survive, become stronger, and go to a bigger city." The protagonist nodded, heeding the professor's advice. Thinking that Moo-hyuk would leave that place someday, the professor asked him to visit his mother, but the young man swore, "We'll get out of here together no matter what happens, Professor. We'll go see your mother together." Hearing the boy's words of hope, the professor smiled with a cigarette in his mouth. He couldn't help but chuckle, accepting the offer. "Very well, then become very strong to help me get out of here." Confident, Cha Moo-hyuk prepared to end the day. While the red moon shone in the sky, the duo slept. Those who were dragged to these lands normally settled in regions far from urban centers. Even the rent for a cabin in the countryside reached 8,000 points. Announcing that he was leaving, Moo-hyuk thought that he should pay the rent before hunting, annoyed about having to worry about this even in another world. To not become homeless, he headed towards the village, and little by little he saw more and more houses appear on his walk. His dream was to be able to leave that decrepit place and go to a big city with his professor. A few minutes of walking later, Cha Moo-hyuk arrived at the central building in the great square of the village of Mauti. The large tower, compared to the small houses, seemed to have been intentionally built to demonstrate the power of the dominance. After entering the tower, as always, Cha Moo-hyuk felt unwell, but upon looking around he couldn't see anyone. However, before he realized it, a somber person appeared behind him. With scary eyes and a smile, the being approached in silence and unexpectedly touched Cha Moo-hyuk's shoulder. The protagonist got goosebumps from head to toe from the scare, almost jumping. Floating in the air, the person with blonde hair laughed upon seeing that her prank had worked better than she expected. Sweating coldly, Cha Moo-hyuk stammered upon seeing her. Landing on the ground and wiping the tears that came from so much laughter, the woman with pointed ears commented, "It really was more fun than I thought. You always seem so miserable. I wanted to see your other facial expressions. This was a reaction full of spirit. You're really fun." A little surprised and confused, Cha Moo-hyuk stood up, asking her not to treat people who came on business that way. Stopping her joking, the woman smiled and once again rose into the air. A pair of black wings appeared from her back, and with a somber air she asked, "What do you want from me, human?" She was none other than the general administrator of the village of Mauti, the Dark Lord Kreusta. After a while of talking, Krusta snapped her fingers. A mark appeared on Mohyuk's chest. The mark was a symbol over the heart for humans who had been taken to Helacion. The symbol's function was to store points, and it was a cause for countless conflicts. Looking at a status window, the protagonist huffed in annoyance. All the points he had worked hard to get were going to be spent on rent. Smiling as if she were a good person, Krusta asked if she could help Mohyuk with anything else, and with the same smile she sent him away. "If there's nothing else, get out of here, as I never want to see your face again." Annoyed, the protagonist turned around, warning, "I'll be back to buy some drinks tonight." Laughing as she saw the grim expression on his face, Krusta watched him leave. Mohyuk was letting her laugh as much as she wanted. Although he was weak at the moment, he was confident that by hunting goblins in the forest, he would gradually become stronger. Finding his first prey of the day, Mohyuk advanced, gritting his teeth, intending to vent his fury. His sharp sword pierced the goblin in one swift motion. After collecting from inside the goblin, Mohyuk was excited as he found another core this time. Although this was a secret growth method, the growth rate seemed very slow. Mohyuk remembered that, according to his professor, the growth rate of those who had the help of large families and clans reached 0.6 per day. Discovering this surprised Mohyuk, as each goblin core provided about 3% of that value. The professor explained that this was only for common humans, promising ones could reach a rate of 0.8, reminding the young man how the growth factor was shown as a number on their marks. The professor, although he didn't know the fundamentals behind the system, explained that the mark was similar to game stats. It started with strength, stamina, agility, and resistance. Besides possessing 3 categories that could be added, although they were not classified as the 4 basic ones. Each category was classified from 7 to 1, with 1 being the highest value. There were also precise numerical values, which existed as percentages in each rank. Upon completing 100% of rank 7, it would be possible to reach rank 6, and so on. Everyone started at rank 7, but the problem was how to make the numerical value precise. Depending on physical abilities, the values were distributed differently. The history of Helacion was long. The people dragged to this world naturally created a group. Clans, guilds, families, the names might vary, but the goal was always to survive. As the years passed, the number of people drastically increased, creating a society. There were more and more groups, and these competed with each other, the weakest always being eliminated in the process. Luckily, before being eliminated alone in a gutter, Mohyuk found his master. They had met at the worst moment of the young man's life, but still, this had been a stroke of luck. After taking a cigarette from Mohyuk and lighting it, the professor continued. "The unfair part of all this is that you have to buy growth potions to increase your normal attributes. It's not based on experience from hunting monsters. It's a very bad system. There's no worse game than this. Of course, this doesn't take into account all the sword technique, combat skills, and personal skills, but this is the basic. You know a different method now, so we come to the conclusion. With all this fierce competition between the clans, you won't even get close to a hunting ground. To be able to increase your growth rate just with goblin cores, you would need at least 50 goblins AI day." Following his professor's instructions and hunting as much as he could, Mohyuk got closer to the starting line every day. Continuing to hunt the goblins, Mohyuk remembered a mission he had to do obligatorily as a settler of Helacion. The monsters, as well as the 40 settlers who would be gathered, were extremely dangerous, the humans even more so than the monsters. However, Mohyuk hoped to survive the chaos of this monthly mission, to continue hunting more and more. After several hours of hunting, Mohyuk stopped to rest. He sighed for a while and sat on a stone, exhausted. He wanted to take a break before looking for more cores. Lighting a cigarette, he remembered how it had been 3 weeks since he had started overworking. He didn't think he would succeed at first, but he got used to it and managed to collect points and cores. With this, it would be possible to buy an item his professor would need in the forced hunt, as well as a better weapon. Mohyuk had become quite attached to his dagger, but it was limited. As it would be bad if the dagger broke in the forced hunt, he intended to buy a new one. While Mohyuk was doing the math on how much he would spend, he didn't notice a monster approaching from behind him. The monster, green and muscular, raised its hand with sharp claws, and only by making a sound did it alert Mohyuk, who jumped to the side, dodging the powerful palm. Surprised, Mohyuk looked at the monster, who wore a bone mask. The large goblin once again raised its hand, which had gotten stuck in the stone, and prepared for new attacks. Staring at Mohyuk, it unexpectedly spoke. "Are you the one who has been massacring my race?" Mohyuk was surprised to hear an orc speak. The large goblin stared at Mohyuk, curious. "You look like the scared rat I was about to eat. Tell me, have you never seen a goblin like me before?" Mohyuk ended up responding to the giant goblin, stating that he was the first of such stature he had seen. The giant goblin cracked its bones, preparing itself, and advised, "Listen and learn why you should be afraid of me. To tell you a little about my greatness, I am the one who was born to protect my race from from plunderers like you. The goblin's sharp claws were raised, and with heavy steps it began to walk towards Mohyuk. Walking with confidence, the goblin announced its identity. I am the defender of the goblins. I am the chief Karakra. Upon seeing such a monster up close, a shock of knowledge surged into Cha Mohyuk's mind as he remembered that his professor had already spoken of them. This was an entity that appeared among monsters of races without intellect, a powerful, high-level monster with the ability to think. Cha Mohyuk didn't believe he had only remembered them now, at such a crucial moment. The giant goblin began to advance in long strides towards Cha Mohyuk while roaring, "You will pay for the lives of those of my race that you attacked. Human, your time has come." Hurriedly, Cha Mohyuk raised his dagger, seeing the fast giant goblin approaching. With the strength it possessed and the weight of its own body, the giant goblin hit Cha Mohyuk squarely, throwing him back. In addition to throwing the young man back, the goblin also managed to drag its claws across his chest as it passed by Cha Mohyuk like a tractor. Falling to the ground, Mohyuk rolled several times until he stopped. With its claws stained red, the goblin smilingly tasted them as if it were ketchup. Cha Mohyuk gritted his teeth, as the goblin was much stronger than him, whether in brute force, speed, or combat senses. Such a monster didn't even look like a goblin. Suddenly, the monster pointed at Cha Mohyuk and commented arrogantly, "You are weak!" Clenching its fist, it continued, "Even though my species is weak, I expected more from you, as many had been eliminated. But it's a shame. My closed fists are enough to deal with you." Arrogantly, the giant goblin made a finger sign, calling Cha Mohyuk, "I'll let you attack first. Don't reject the offer and come to me." Gritting his teeth, Mohyuk returned the mockery. "You talk like a human for something that was created." A confusion passed through the giant goblin's hidden eyes, who questioned what the young man was trying to say. The protagonist was direct. "What do you think? I'm talking about your race. For the last 3 weeks, I've hunted an average of 50 of you every day. That is, more than 1,000 goblins. The forest near the village isn't that big, and I haven't seen a single goblin residence. But every night, the goblins started to wander through the forest again, in a similar number to the day before. You may not understand, but this world works like a game." The large goblin fell silent, listening to the human boy speak. Message system, growth windows, and many other things. You and your race are just monsters that reappear infinitely. At the human's words, the giant goblin began to laugh, as if it had gone mad. Its laughter, so loud as to force Cha Mohyuk to cover his ears, crossed the forest with its energy. After finishing laughing, the goblin calmed down, not believing Mohyuk's words. "I was wondering what you were talking about, but it seems it's just nonsense. Did you really think this body was like the other disposable ones?" Frowning and asking if the goblin was somehow different, Cha Mohyuk questioned why it would be there then. Smiling, the goblin refused to speak, as it wouldn't be fun. However, excitedly, it proposed a challenge. "Don't be arrogant, human. Shut up and attack. If you can even make a small scratch, I will reward you." Believing that the goblin wanted to force him to fight to discover more information, Mohyuk was willing to accept, as with the brief moment of rest, he had already managed to calm down. Raising the dagger, the protagonist faced the goblin on the other side of the road. On one side, a giant goblin with great expectations for the battle. On the other, a worried young human. And it was precisely the latter who invested in the attack first. Knowing that the longer the fight lasted, the worse it would be for him, Cha Mohyuk took the initiative. Charging against the giant goblin, Cha Mohyuk's intention was simple: to create an opening with a quick attack and find a way to defeat it. When the dagger attack passed within centimeters of its body, the giant goblin mocked, using a dagger as if it were a longsword. As soon as it dodged, the goblin stood still for a moment before looking grimly at Mohyuk. "Hey, are you kidding?" The protagonist noticed something at that exact moment and moved quickly. Changing his body's trajectory, he attacked once more. The dagger traveled towards the grim look behind the mask. However, at the last instant, the goblin raised its hand with sharp nails, deflecting the furious attack. After a brief moment, the goblin moved its other arm, launching a counterattack, which Cha Mohyuk dodged by taking a step back. After its counterattack, the goblin stopped once again, allowing Mohyuk to attest to what he had imagined. A goblin, after all, was a goblin, no matter its size. Fast and strong, but strangely, they didn't think about what their next moves would be. Cha Mohyuk had learned the basics of dagger use from his professor. He, upon openly attacking, pretended to show an opening before the goblin. Spinning the dagger in an acrobatic movement, something he couldn't do before, he changed his trajectory for the second attack. Thanks to the last 3 weeks of training and combat, Cha Mohyuk had seen his swordsmanship skills, as well as his stats, grow. As the goblin had deflected his attack by having its hand hit, Cha Mohyuk pointed the dagger at it and proclaimed, "I want my reward, Karakra!" The giant goblin was still surprised by what had happened, but it ended up smiling, and its smile became a laugh. "Finally! It's finally getting fun!" Before Cha Mo-hyuk realized it, the giant goblin had moved and charged against him, raising its sharp claws. Several claw attacks cut through the air, as well as everything in front of it, throwing Cha Mo-hyuk far away. Having retreated, the surprise was evident on the young man's face as the giant goblin had become even faster than before. Karakra laughed while charging once more. "You managed to hit me! I was able to reflect like a warrior because of it! Good job!" Continuing to retreat step by step, Mo-hyuk tried to question about the bet they had made. And without ceasing its claw attacks, the goblin excitedly shouted, "I will really answer one of your questions before I eliminate you." Annoyed for not getting his answer soon, Mo-hyuk replied back while defending himself from the cross attacks. "Can you stop delaying the answer like a cheap bastard?" Venting his fury, Mo-hyuk realized that he had angered the goblin even more. It, smiling, mocked, "It doesn't matter if I delay my answer a little, does it?" Immediately, the giant goblin moved its leg, raising its bent knee. Its knee hit its target, Cha Mo-hyuk, squarely in the center of his point of gravity. Cha Mo-hyuk couldn't resist and was thrown far away, flying like a baseball hit by a bat until his back hit a tree. Cha Mo-hyuk coughed heavily, feeling his ribcage being thrown in the trash. Upon falling to the ground and angrily looking up, the goblin was already before him, concluding the reasoning. "I won't talk now because I'm finally feeling what it's like to fight for real." With its nails, long and sharp as daggers, the giant goblin attacked Cha Mo-hyuk. The attack rapidly approached Cha Mo-hyuk, who, despite the fear, was gritting his teeth with anger. He knew this would be his end. Unless he dodged, everything would be over. Facing the goblin, who had already extended its hand, tearing the air with its sharp claws, Mo-hyuk felt so much pain that dodging became impossible. As the attack approached, he thought, "Is this really going to be my end?" He ended up closing his eyes, too tired to dodge. He no longer wanted to go through that suffering and preferred to give up. But his will to give up disappeared, and the gleam in his eyes returned as he remembered that he needed to get revenge on those who sent him to that place, the damned dark beings. The giant goblin's attack fell to the ground, without finding its target, who, despite the pain, jumped away. Managing to dodge, Cha Mo-hyuk sat down on the ground once again, placing his hand on his stomach. The goblin, who had not hit its target, praised the human for his dodging skills. To test such skills once more, it charged at Mo-hyuk, who didn't stay still, also charging. The protagonist jumped at the goblin, who, when trying to spin its arm with sharp claws, missed once more. Continuously running away, Cha Mo-hyuk felt he was fighting an emissary of chaos. This made him even angrier at who had thrown him into that place. He just wanted to question them about why they had done that to him. Getting close enough to Cha Mo-hyuk, the goblin yelled while extending its arm, "I got you!" The attack hit Cha Mo-hyuk's back, who in the middle of his run was unbalanced. The protagonist gritted his teeth and ended up falling to the ground. Immediately, the goblin prepared another attack. Despite the difficulty, Cha Mo-hyuk held his dagger firmly. He got up as fast as he could, raising his arm to defend himself from the goblin's sharp claws. Halfway through the movement, he spun the knife he was holding, placing the blade to the inside of his hand. Moving quickly, he launched a wide cut against the goblin, who unexpectedly ran away. The goblin took several steps back, distancing itself from Cha Mo-hyuk. The monster observed the human momentarily and commented, "Your left arm is hurt and your ribs are broken, but you still won't give up? Not bad. I've never seen a human like you before." In the midst of the goblin's contemplation, Cha Mo-hyuk demanded, "You should give me what I want now. How did you get to Helacion?" Laughing, the goblin stated that it would answer, but at the same time charged for an attack. "We're wasting time. Let's talk while we fight." Seeing the goblin attack, Cha Mo-hyuk extended the dagger forward, clashing it against the monster's claws. Upon having its attack blocked, the goblin revealed, "I wasn't brought here. I came alone." Cha Mo-hyuk was surprised by what he heard, and the goblin soon completed, "I received a mission from the dark guys. Basically, I'm a mercenary." Furiously gritting his teeth upon hearing that the goblin had gone there alone, Mo-hyuk demanded that it tell him the way out. However, smiling, the goblin asked why it should do that. Mo-hyuk's demand continued, "You said it was a reward. Can you call it a reward when you only answered one question?" Refusing to answer more questions, the goblin moved its other arm while yelling and attacking. "You've gotten too careless! Did you forget about my left hand?" However, in the middle of the attack, the goblin looked down, surprised. Kicking the goblin below the arm, Cha Mo-hyuk returned, "You're the one who got too careless. You got distracted just because of one question." Cha Mo-hyuk pressed the dagger forward. Unexpectedly, he managed to break the giant goblin's defense, launching several sharp attacks in a row. His last, most powerful attack descended like a lightning bolt, crossing from sky to earth while hitting the goblin. The goblin coughed heavily, but in the midst of the cough, a smile. The monster moved quickly, launching a claw attack against Cha Mo-hyuk. Having dodged the attack by retreating, Cha Mo-yuk advanced once more. He was able to understand the monster more and more, which didn't think about its next attacks. Holding the dagger with both hands, Cha Mo-yuk charged against the goblin. In the same way, the goblin advanced towards him, trusting in its own claws. The sound of red liquid being splashed crossed the forest, while the ground was stained. Cha Mo-yuk, launching a thrust with his dagger, hit the center of the target. The goblin stood still, and from its mouth, 2 red trails ran down. In the next instant, Cha Mo-yuk's dagger stuck to the goblin's body broke. He retreated with only part of the blade. The goblin, giving its last laughs, fell forward while praising, "Incredible human." Frowning, Cha Mo-yuk questioned, "What's incredible? You did this intentionally." In the middle of the sentence, he heard the goblin complain, "Shut up." The goblin sat on the ground, forcibly enduring the pain to speak. "Don't insult our fight. I fought without regrets." The protagonist sat in front of it, took a cigarette, and asked the goblin if it also wanted one. The goblin refused, as it didn't use them, just as it didn't understand humans for doing so. Observing the goblin, Cha Mo-yuk commented that it seemed relieved. That was exactly how the goblin chief felt, as finding its end in a battle was a blessing. Watching the sun begin to set, Cha Mo-yuk asked, already knowing the answer, "You don't know how to get out of here, do you?" The goblin nodded, revealing it had been tricked. "You can call me a monster, but I have family and friends. But because of a contract that tricked me, I couldn't go home for a long period. I always fought with everything, but regret, fury, and shame always accompanied me. Most of the time I was afraid. The goblin lowered its head, grimly continuing its story. "I was afraid of being consumed by longing and finding an end that didn't suit a warrior. Thank you for fighting with me with everything you had. I sincerely thank you for allowing my end to be worthy of a warrior." Investigating a little more, Cha Mo-hyuk questioned why the goblin chief was there, if it was afraid. The monster revealed it was still a mercenary. As such, it was tied to a contract, and that's why it couldn't say much, as silence clauses were also part of it. Getting up, Mo-hyuk sighed upon observing such loyalty and walked away. "I'm not your savior, nor your martyr. Don't put people in a role you want." Turning his back on the monster, the protagonist was about to let it have its end, but the goblin called him back by laughing. "You should collect your rewards before you go." Frowning, Mo-hyuk asked if it was joking. The goblin called him with its finger, asking the human to sit down, as not much time was left. Since it was not going to live for much longer, the goblin decided to give some tips to the one who defeated it, nothing that would break the rules of its contract. The protagonist scratched his head and approached once more, offering a cigarette again. Thus time passed, and at sunset they finished talking. Tired and weakened, the goblin thanked him, as it also apologized for having to leave. Rejecting the apology, the protagonist proudly asked, "Anyway, cigarettes are better than you thought, aren't they?" Weakly tasting the gift, the goblin replied, "Considering they're human things, they're not so bad." Thus, the goblin said its last words, stopping to move. The protagonist closed his eyes and, enjoying the silence and the arrival of darkness, sighed into the wind. Goodbye. A while later, Mo-hyuk met again with the administrator Krusta, who commented upon seeing him, "You seem to have been through a lot of trouble." The protagonist stayed silent, staring at her for a moment, then demanded, "Just heal me." Smiling as always, Krusta created a magic circle, reminding him it would cost 10,000 points. She then placed her hands with sharp claws on Cha Mo-hyuk's body. She touched his chest as well as his shoulders. After healing him, she asked curiously, "You're not going to complain that it was excessively expensive, as you always do? I guess you must have earned a ton of money from what you did to end up like this, right?" Extending a bag to Krusta, Mo-hyuk asked what she could do with that. Curious to know what materials he had brought her, she was about to say she wouldn't buy them, when she was surprised and fell silent. Picking up some eyes, claws, and other materials, she asked, "You defeated Karakra? It seems you worked hard. He was quite strong." Ignoring the comments, Mo-hyuk asked her to proceed. Krusta snapped her fingers at his request. In front of the administrator, a window with several items appeared. The protagonist analyzed each one, deciding which would be the best for his choice. Some time ago, during his final conversation with Karakra, the protagonist was surprised by a request from the goblin, "Consume me." Seeing the human's confusion, the goblin asked, "Didn't you know? The idiots don't know, but I do." Mo-hyuk was hesitant, until the goblin questioned him firmly. "You won't do it, because I can talk and think just like you and your race?" As expected of human logic, the goblin deeply requested, "Don't judge someone just by what you know. It's an honor to remain as part of a winner, not a humiliation. If you want my heart, use everything of me you need." Mo-hyuk was still hesitant, but the goblin detailed what could be useful to him, his nails famous for being strong. After so much insistence, Mo-hyuk gave in, thanking him, and that's how they said goodbye. Now, looking at the item window, Cha Mo-hyuk could observe what could be obtained, and one of them caught his attention, the chief's lenses, an item that increased the user's base vision vision and enhanced night vision. Although they had known each other for a short time, and Karakra had been a goblin, in this world, besides his professor, Mohyuk had not had a good conversation with anyone. Thus, the protagonist chose the contact lenses, told her to sell the teeth, and asked for a transplant option on the weapon he chose. With the long nails, Mohyuk asked Kryusta to adjust their area and size to create a weapon. With everything decided, Mohyuk internally thanked Karakra, asking to borrow his strength permanently. At nightfall, the protagonist returned to the house where he lived with his professor. Inside the residence, he looked at his own hands and, upon closing them unexpectedly, claws similar to those of the warrior goblin appeared from his fists. Upon seeing the items the young man had obtained, his professor laughed. "You've been watching too much television." Confused, Mohyuk asked if he had made a bad choice, but the professor reassured him. Despite spending a lot of points for the lenses and claws, it had been worth it. The goblin chief's claws were at rank 7, were sharp and hard, very durable, although impossible to repair if broken. After seeing the claws, the professor asked the young man if he had found a core, and Mohyuk confirmed. The professor imagined that a goblin chief must have given a lot of experience. The boy, looking at the time, confirmed. Being able to tell that Mohyuk had become stronger just by looking at him, the professor asked if they should smoke while talking. Knowing how goblin chiefs were warriors with honor, the professor asked the boy if that had been the first time he fought an intelligent monster. Upon hearing the contemplative young man's confirmation, the professor warned him, "You will encounter more monsters like that as you are growing. It's uncommon, but you could also make emotional exchanges with them, just as you did today." Surprised to have been discovered, Mohyuk asked how he knew. The professor then explained that he could see it in his expression. Despite that, the professor reminded him, "Don't hesitate to seek your growth." The goblin chief said the same, didn't he? The professor knew that he didn't feel so good about eliminating an opponent with whom he had shared emotions, but he remembered that there were many other monsters like humans. Helacion is a place where even humans shed blood among themselves. I don't want to say this while living dependent on you, but don't trust or let yourself be easily influenced by your opponents. The man who failed to do that is currently in front of you. With a grimly melancholic look, the professor shared his own mistakes. Surprised by the professor's past, Mohyuk was about to say something when he cheered him up. "Don't be down. You won the fight and survived. If you don't think so, look at your hands. The evidence that you are a warrior is there." There was dignity in the professor's words. "Puff out your chest, show your achievements, you have the right to do that." Returning to smiling as he put aside the sadness and melancholy, Cha Mohyuk thanked the professor. Curious, the professor asked the young man's growth level. Confident, Cha Mohyuk replied, "It's higher than you can imagine." The next day, using his new claws, Mohyuk went hunting. With the triple crossing cut, using the 3 claws of each hand, he defeated a goblin instantly. With a last breath, the goblin fell to the ground. Confidently swinging his arm, the protagonist cleaned his claws, throwing the blue liquid from the goblin's body onto the ground. After consuming Karakra, Cha Mohyuk had obtained a great advancement. His health points, as well as his strength, had increased by 10%. The day flowed normally in the forest. Despite seeming unusual at first, Cha Mohyuk got used to the claws. In a short time, they already felt like a part of him. Surprisingly, using them didn't hurt. He could also control the force inflicted by them, as well as expand and retract them. Cha Mohyuk sought to become stronger and not disappoint his professor, as well as Karakra. Cha Mohyuk had made a decision he would follow from that day on. Just as he was about to go back to hunting, Cha Mohyuk heard someone call him, "Hey, it's you again." Turning around, he found himself facing Bei Yangchul, who commented sarcastically, "Isn't it great that we see each other often?" Surprised, the protagonist questioned how Yangchul knew he was there. Hearing an irritated tone, Yangchul warned, maintaining contempt, "What's with that tone? Are you treating me like a stalker just because I greeted you?" Arrogantly, Yangchul stated that he hadn't found any interesting monsters, so he had decided to take a walk, ending up running into him, who didn't have many places to go. Even annoyed by the provocation, Cha Mohyuk remained silent. Clapping his hands, Yangchul changed the subject. Whistling like the little birds that had told him, he commented, "From the rumors I've heard, it seems you got something big, right?" Mohyuk was confused and wondered if Yangchul had seen his claws, but the term herd caught his attention. Annoyed, he questioned, "You really are a stalker. Why do you care so much about other people's lives?" Being accused like that, Yangchul changed the subject, as he really had something he wanted to discuss. He revealed that Kryusta was the one spreading rumors about him, so he didn't need to be treated like a stalker, and took the opportunity to provoke, "I don't know what you got or how much you earned, but I'm sure it wasn't much." Clenching his fist tightly, Mohyuk cursed the damned Kryusta. Luckily, Yangchul hadn't found out about Karakra's nails. As if he were at least friendly, Yangchul unexpectedly put his arm over Mohyuk's shoulder. Don't you think you should share a little of what you earned? You only have 6 days, remember? With a grim look, he smiled, staring at Mohyuk up close. I suggest you keep in mind that the way I treat you depends on your attitude. If you annoy me, I promise you'll miss the good old days. Patting Mohyuk on the back, Youngchul advised him. So let's stay on good terms. Saying they would meet before choosing their new classes, Youngchul left. With a cold look, Mohyuk watched him. The protagonist thought about letting his claws out and attacking, but ended up holding back. Mohyuk couldn't believe he had almost lost his patience. He knew he couldn't eliminate Youngchul anyway, and fighting him, who had guild protection, was not a good choice. Although Helacion was similar to a game, even if he got stronger, it was possible to lose everything in an instant. There was no such thing as health bars. Mohyuk could attack with a surprise strike using his claws, but it would be necessary to wait a few more days. In 6 days, it would be the 5-month mark since his arrival. To become an official settler of Helacion, he would need to choose his class: hunter, looter, adventurer, or guardian. After choosing one of them, a new stat called magic power would be unlocked, and skills would become available. Although it was possible to do everything that was possible to do in games, reality was not as fun as them. That day would also be when the humans of the 13th round could attack each other. The ability to eliminate was currently unavailable thanks to the rules of the dark beings. But looting and even eliminating would soon be trivial things. Although they said that those who had been there for a long time were safe, such people had been in that world for, at most, a year. After that time, they would also lose protection. Mohyuk had not affiliated with any guild or clan, but thanks to that, he met his professor in Karakra. Using this advantage, Mohyuk sought to become stronger to survive in this world. And to do that, Mohyuk knew he needed new equipment. Walking through the forest, he reached a new area, where he found a giant frog. The monster Paturus noticed Mohyuk's presence and croaked curiously. Paturus's main weapon was its long and poisonous tongue. It also attacked with jumps and with the weight of its large body. Taking out his claws, Mohyuk prepared to face such a monster, which, besides being difficult to eliminate, didn't even have a core. Croaking furiously, the Paturas attacked with a large tongue. Mohyuk was there to train with his new claws. In the face of the attack, he didn't run away, but advanced. Skillfully spinning his body, Mohyuk dodged the giant tongue, which passed behind him. With a smile, Mohyuk already expected to be able to dodge. Spinning his body, he managed to attack the Patura's tongue, cutting it like a barbecue. He had read the monster's movements precisely. The frog pulled its tongue back, and instantly Mohyuk advanced to not allow it to attack a second time. Mohyuk attacked the place where the frog was, but didn't hit, as it jumped into the sky. The frog seemed to stop in the air for a second, before descending like a rocket towards Chamohyuk. As it fell, cutting through the air, the large frog opened its mouth, intending to devour Mohyuk in one go. Seeing the frog was faster than he thought, Mohyuk imagined he needed to retreat. However, confidence surged in his eyes, deciding to trust Karakra and his claws. Mohyuk crouched, got momentum, and jumped in the direction of the frog. A frontal confrontation was about to happen, frog against claws. With its mouth open, the Patura stared at Mohyuk's furious eyes. The frog missed its attack. Mohyuk, on the other hand, passed by it, tearing everything in front of him with the powerful claws. A little while later, next to the frog with its eyes closed and tongue out, Mohyuk sat down, resting. Looking at his claws, Mohyuk seemed surprised. He ended up feeling the same thing he had felt fighting against goblins. But the strength, precision, and convenience of the claws exceeded his expectations. To the heavens, Mohyuk praised how strong Karakra was while alive. Managing to defeat such a monster, Mohyuk was confident that after selecting a class, the first forced hunt he would participate in would be easy. However, there was something he wanted to do before that. He knew that, as long as he made an effort, he would become stronger. What happened from then on would be the most important thing, so he should stay focused. 6 days later, Mohyuk found himself in front of a large tower in the city. Before passing through the large door, he wondered if he would really choose a new class in that selection tower. Shaking off the nervousness with a sigh, he walked in with a confident look. Thus he entered the tower, which seemed quite somber. Although he had heard that there was a being different from Krusta there, the tower's structure was quite similar to the one he knew. In front of a faint light, Chamoyuk ended up finding a large gift box with a vibrant purple ribbon. He knelt before the box, and although he had a bad feeling about it, he wondered if he should open it. He thought deeply about the options he had, and throwing away his worry, pulled the ribbon to open it. After removing the ribbon, he opened the lid of the box. A thick smoke overflowed, and a second later, a large explosion happened, launching the lid into the air. A large shadowy being appeared amidst the smoke, with a wide smile and long arms that extended towards Chamohyuk. Seeing the monster laughing, Mohyuk frowned, as this was not a type of being he liked. A dark clown with pointed ears and purple hair waved its finger, inviting Mohyuk to approach. The clown introduced itself. "My name is Jack. They normally call me Jack in the Box. Welcome to the consecration of the first blessing." Looking sharply at Mohyuk, he asked how the little show he had demonstrated was. The protagonist was silent for a minute before raising an eyebrow. "Do all dark beings start a conversation like this?" Smiling, the clown reminded him that a sense of humor was essential, and he was an elite in that field. Scratching the back of his neck, the protagonist warned that he didn't have time for comedy, asking to get straight to the point. But this only made Jack laugh even more. Since the young man was in a hurry, Jack granted his wish. Extending his hands, the dark clown made several holographic cards appear, with different symbols. Starting with the class selection, Jack instructed Mohyuk to touch the panel he liked twice. Ignoring the noisy guy, Mohyuk observed the options. He had already made his decision, but looking at them in person, he was having difficulty committing to the choice. Someone's class was not the only thing that made them strong. He still had to be careful, as the stats obtained in the future were based on the chosen class. Hunters gained more health points, looters gained strength, explorers gained agility, and finally, guardians gained resistance. Looters were definitely the most popular class, obviously because of the increase in strength. In the fights in Helacion, strength was the most important thing. Most of the well-known professionals in the region were looters. Since Mohyuk's professor was also a looter, the protagonist hoped to receive some tips. However, he didn't intend to choose that class. Touching one of the panels, Mohyuk chose the hunter class, represented by a bow. Laughing, Jack praised the choice, stating that they would begin immediately. With a mischievous smile, he murmured, "Blessing of boundless malice." A glow appeared around Mohyuk, blessing him with the power of the chosen class. Immediately, several notifications appeared before Mohyuk. His status had changed to settler. His health points gained would be permanently doubled. In addition, he learned several skills related to the hunter class, such as steal health, health maintenance, and tracking. Finally, he also obtained a new stat, magic power. Smiling cheerfully, the clown asked, "So, my friend, did you like it?" It was a bit annoying to be called a friend by a dark being, so Mohyuk ignored him and checked his own body. In the end, he replied, "I don't know yet." Imagining that his health points would double, Mohyuk calculated how many points he would gain per goblin core consumed. He also took a look at the magic power stat. At rank 7, it had 3.5%. There wasn't much to be seen, just a hope to get many cores to increase that stat. In Mohyuk's mind, a stat that affected the effect of his skills was quite interesting. Jack didn't let Mohyuk leave. With a smile, he revealed that it wasn't over yet, as there was a special benefit. He could choose a unique skill, so he should choose well. Laughing, he warned, "This is the last gift for novices like you. Choose something like a self-heal, come on." Ignoring the clown's laughter, Mohyuk promptly chose Jewel Lizard's Camouflage. The clown's eyes narrowed, curious about the chosen skill. Coldly, Mohyuk repeated his choice. Grimly, the clown questioned, "Seriously? Did you even read the entire list of skills?" Cuttingly, Mohyuk stated that he didn't need to read everything. He just needed to get what he wanted. Laughing, Jack warned him not to regret it later. Bringing his sharp nail close to Mohyuk's chest, Jack created a magic circle in front of him. A notification appeared before the protagonist. "You have learned the unique rank skill Jewel Lizard's Camouflage." Curious, Jack asked why he had chosen a skill that could be easily traded for another. However, Mohyuk questioned, "Is there a reason for me to tell you?" The clown smiled, affirming there was none. However, in the next instant, he opened his sharp-toothed mouth and frowned heavily, causing countless grim eyes to appear on his wrinkled forehead. Showing his true appearance, the dark being swore in a grim voice, "If I want to know, you must answer. Staying silent, lying, claiming you'll say later, none of that will work. You have no choice. It would be of great help to you to remember that you are talking to a dark being, understood, mere human." Raising an eyebrow, Mohyuk was not intimidated and mocked. "How scary. Do you want to hear the answer so badly?" Jack fell silent after the confrontation and exploded in a dense smoke. Returning to his more friendly form, the clown touched Mohyuk with his nail, reassuring him, "Were you surprised, my friend? That was just a joke. A joke! I was doing that just because it was my duty as a clown. Don't get so tense." Despite his words, Jack felt that in reality the young man had not gotten tense at all. Mohyuk frowned, holding back his irritation. Dropping the subject, Jack rose, pointed at Mohyuk and declared, "It's quite impressive that you've survived until now, but let me tell you, the real thing starts now. The true game begins with the official colonization, so use what you have to move forward." Bidding Mohyuk goodbye excitedly, the clown waved his hands. "Good luck, my friend. Go safely." Ignoring Jack's antics, the protagonist left the tower. His decisive look showed that everything had gone according to his plan. After leaving the tower, Mohyuk walked to an alley between two houses while carrying his bag. Hiding there, Mohyuk allowed himself to sweat like a pig, gasping tiredly. Trembling to the point of needing to hold onto the wall, he gasped, "I thought that would be my end." This was the first time Mohyuk had felt such a strong sense of intimidation. Amidst the fear, Mohyuk wondered, if the dark being who only presides over a class selection is like this, how strong must those superior to him be? How strong do I need to become to face them? Looking at the horizon, at the tower, and at the rest of the city, the protagonist wondered if he would really be able to escape from Helacion and if there was any way to do so. Upon returning home, Mohyuk's professor was surprised by his choice of skill. The protagonist confirmed his choice, prompting his professor to elaborate. The first unique skill is important. Do you know why? Mohyuk knew very well. There were two ways to learn skills. One was the unique skill distributed in the class selection, but other than that, there was only one other way, the ring skills method. It was possible to buy the rings with points or obtain them by defeating monsters. The value of the rings depended on their rarity, but they were extremely expensive to the point of not being worth buying. Thus, the goal was to obtain them by defeating powerful monsters, but the drop rate was extremely low. Therefore, in the end, to get good skills, it was necessary to defeat powerful monsters. His professor wanted to hear the reason behind Mohyuk's skill choice. The young man wanted to take advantage of one last opportunity, to obtain skills without great effort. As he seemed hesitant to speak, the professor reassured him. The important thing is what you think, so tell me. Confidently, Mohyuk revealed his thoughts. Jewel Lizard's camouflage is a skill that redistributes numerical stats a limited number of times. It can be used flexibly in various situations. The professor understood his intention, to choose a skill to adapt. However, there were several alternatives for this. Mohyuk, however, revealed that this had not been the main reason for the choice. Raising 2 fingers, Mohyuk completed. There are 2 key reasons. First, it's a unique skill. It's not affected by my magical power rate. It can be evolved, becoming a trump card when I grow up. The unique rank skill Jewel Lizard's camouflage was at the 7th rank. It could redistribute the numerical value of a unique skill of the same rank for 1 hour. It also had an attribute bonus, added based on the skill's rank. This was a skill that could not be used for skill combination. After showing the description, Mohyuk stated that it would be useful, since he had a low amount of magical power. Hearing all the reasoning behind the choice, the professor commented, "You've certainly grown." Smiling with satisfaction, he declared, "So let's make the most of this skill." The professor revealed that there was a perfect monster for Mohyuk to fight. It would be better than facing goblins. The next day, Mohyuk crossed the forest. Hiding behind bushes, he observed the place the professor had mentioned. He soon found the described monster. On the bank of a river, there was a creature similar to a kangaroo with a boar's head. The monster also noticed the presence of Mohyuk, who was approaching. It was a solitary being, which guarded vast territories, so it was not possible to hunt many in a short time. However, the professor had chosen such a creature so that the young man could train. Coming out of the bushes, Mohyuk faced the monster on the riverbank. He quickly advanced against it, which also had a core that could be devoured. Using the camouflage ability, Mohyuk decided to invest in strength and agility first. His goal was to attack and defeat the monster quickly. Leaving aside life and stamina, he pulled out his claws, trying to finish it off in a single attack. However, he realized the danger in the middle of the advance. The monster extended its long leg, trying to kick him before he approached. The heavy paw confronted the claws, blocking the attack. With its boar face, it growled, ready to attack. Mohyuk understood what his professor meant by saying that this monster had fast jumps as its main form of attack. Without increasing agility to the maximum, he would not have been able to dodge. As the monster was not that slow, Mohyuk risked another attack, quickly approaching to try to pierce it with his claws, but the enemy dodged and counterattacked. The protagonist was too slow and was forced to block. The heavy kangaroo tail hit him hard, throwing him far away, rolling on the gravel ground. Upon getting up, Mohyuk analyzed the blow, understanding the essence of the tail attack. Without giving him a break, the kangaroo with a boar's head jumped on him. Agile, Mohyuk dodged to the side, but in the next instant, the large monster was again on top of him. With its fangs, the enemy growled fiercely, spun its body, and launched another attack with the heavy tail. It hit the ground hard, and by dodging, Mohyuk managed to counterattack from behind. The monster tried to stop him, but it was too late. Mohyuk aimed at the right spot, and when the enemy turned to attack him, he sank his claws. The creature squealed like a pig, giving its last breaths under Mohyuk's piercing attack. Under the light of the sunset, he, on top of the fallen body, panted heavily. The enemy had been eliminated, and Mohyuk lay down on the stone ground to rest, raising one of his hands to the sky. Seeing the sun reflected in his claws, he declared confidently, "I won," and in an easier way than expected. After getting up and observing the monster, he remembered hearing that it had thin skin, but even considering that, the attack pierced faster than he imagined. With Karakra's claws and the new skill, Mohyuk was able to increase his stats to hunt such creatures efficiently. Now he just needed to extract the core and continue his hunt to become stronger. Finding a core, even without the guarantee of 100% chance, he felt lucky. Upon eating it, he noticed that it was tastier and less smelly than goblin cores. Upon consuming the core of that beast, he discovered the result. His strength had increased by 0.16% permanently. A smile appeared on the protagonist's face upon seeing a gain 6 times greater than that provided by a goblin. After a few days of hunting, Mohyuk met with leader Krusta. He had obtained 16 tails, 19 livers, and 17 tendons, which earned him 1,190 points. With those points, Mohyuk surpassed the 20,000 accumulated points mark. He had worked hard in the last 4 weeks. In the beginning, he hunted only 4 Koilo monsters a day, but by the end of the 4th week, he was already hunting 20 a day, reaching a total of 360 monsters killed. The amount of points obtained was impressive, but the numerical value of the attributes gained was even more remarkable. He ended up observing his stats, evaluating the gains in comparison to the dangerous hunt, which, with time, he got used to. Somewhat irritated, Krusta called Mohyuk's attention. "Hey, human, can't you look at your stats outside? If you have nothing else to do here, why don't you leave?" However, Mohyuk contradicted her, stating that he wanted something else. Bored, Krusta already imagined. "Cigarettes again? You've really become addicted. I'm not a convenience store, you know." But Mohyuk revealed that he wanted to pay the rent in advance. Krusta was surprised, but imagined that, as he was earning more money, he wanted to take care of his obligations, as he didn't know what could happen in the future. Soon, Krusta told him to say everything at once so they wouldn't waste time. Mohyuk looked at the peaceful dark woman for a moment and revealed, "I won't participate in the next forced hunt." Confused, Krusta questioned if he was serious. When she realized he was decided, she warned, "There will be a penalty of 50,000 points. Also, if you want to avoid the next one, you'll have to pay double, 100,000 points. Understood?" Warning that many people obtained great gains in the hunt, she asked if he really wanted to ignore it. Confirming his wish, Mohyuk hurried her. Krusta ended up smiling. Hey, you're so scared, and here I was thinking you had become stronger." Allowing him to use the escape as a strategy, she snapped her fingers, deducting the points he possessed. Thus, Mohyuk left the City Hall Tower. There were many benefits to participating in the forced hunt, such as the chance to obtain equipment and monsters. With luck, it was even possible to get rare skill rings. But Mohyuk wanted to avoid such an event for survival reasons. As he would have to compete with other people from the 13th round, who received heavy support, it would be difficult to stay alive or get any gain. In exchange for not participating in the mandatory hunt, Mohyuk could explore several areas that would become empty and occupy them while everyone was absent, easily obtaining points. Convinced that he had made the right decision, Mohyuk returned home to meet with the professor. However, as soon as he opened the door, disbelief and shock took his eyes. His professor was on the ground, completely without strength to get up. Mohyuk ran to help him sit up. Weakly, the man murmured, "You've arrived?" Asking, worried if he was okay, Mohyuk saw the professor grit his teeth. "I'm fine. I just took a few punches." Helping him to get back on his feet, Mohyuk asked, irritated, "Who was the bastard who did this?" The professor revealed that it had been Park Hyun-soo, someone Mohyuk already knew. There was no way to forget such a man. A week after being dragged to that world, Park Hyun-soo had taken advantage of him to get points. Hyun-soo wouldn't even dare to look at Mohyuk's professor in the eyes in his golden age, showing how cowardly he was. While taking care of him, Mohyuk asked the reason for the aggression. The professor revealed that some guilds were forming alliances for the expedition and looked for him to get information. As there were many unexplored areas, discovering them first was extremely advantageous. For this, Park Hyun-soo had created a confusion to extract information. Mohyuk was furious, as there was no real reason to attack him. With a weak voice, the professor contradicted him. "What do you mean by reason? Since I'm weakened and they know where I live, of course they would come looking for me. Haven't you fixed that weak logic of yours yet?" The protagonist was shocked by the reprimand, but the professor returned to the main subject, warning that Park Hyun-soo would probably return soon, and that Mohyuk should be careful, avoiding direct confrontations. Confident, Mohyuk thought there was no reason for the veterans to go after him, as he was still a rookie in that world. The professor was firm. "He is not an opponent you can face yet." Even so, Mohyuk was not intimidated. "Don't worry, I won't look for him, but if I find him, I won't avoid him either." The next day, going hunting, Mohyuk entered a new area, but before, he observed his stats. For having gotten used to hunting the Koilos, his numerical values had grown a lot. Looking at the point distribution, he remembered that he couldn't ignore life and stamina in the next hunts. All of Mohyuk's stats were still at rank 7. Life, the biggest of them, had a little more than 28%. Strength was close to 25. Agility and stamina were at 13%, while magical power, the lowest, was still approaching 6% to go up in rank. When he was about to redistribute points, the protagonist noticed a presence. On the tree in front of him, there was a monster from the shiny forest, a rainbow snake, coiled around the trunk with its long and thick body. From such a creature, Mohyuk could sell the eyes, the poison pouch, and the leather. This hunt was very valuable, as it could also provide jerky for consumption and material for traps. Mohyuk advanced against the snake, pulling out his claws. The animal noticed the human presence and jumped from the tree, showing its fangs to attack him. However, Mohyuk's claws were even sharper. He managed to hit the snake's mouth, preventing it from biting him. Quickly, he threw it to the ground, defeating it completely. Mohyuk was surprised that it had been too easy. If things continued like this, he could even get more points than expected. Thus, while the forced hunt was happening, he swore that he would clear all the monsters from that vast area. Mohyuk continued to scour the glowing forest, walking beneath the pastel-colored leaves until he found a new monster. A stone golem stood before him, with one crystal on its neck and another on its face. It was just the two of them in that vast area. The golem made the first move, attacking Mohyuk with a crushing punch. The blow landed where Mohyuk had been, but when the golem raised its hand, nothing was there. Mohyuk was already behind it, his claws bared. Grasping the golem's head, Mohyuk destroyed it with a single attack. Like an avalanche of rocks, the golem collapsed to the ground. Mohyuk collected the crystal, which was worth 3,000 points, and was satisfied. Now he understood why they called this place a gold mine for first years. He was increasingly glad that he had chosen the jewel lizard's camouflage ability. Even Krusta had been surprised when he earned more than 12,000 points in a single hunt. Remembering the expression she had made, Mohyuk smiled. I wish I had a phone to take a picture of that stunned face. Mohyuk looked around, annoyed, as the entire forest was under the control of the larger clans. He didn't understand the need for so much competition when they were all in this together. As he walked, he heard footsteps and quickly got into a combat stance, wondering what had gotten so close to him. He unsheathed his claws, preparing for a fight. Among the flowers, someone with golden eyes watched him in silence. Gritting his teeth and blaming himself for getting too excited, he figured there was no reason for someone from the 13th round not to participate in the forced hunt, just as there was no reason for a second year to be there. Thinking of 1,001 ways to confront the intruder, Mohyuk spoke out loud. How long are you going to stay there? I'm sure you had plenty of chances to attack me off guard. Why don't you get straight to the point if you want to say something? Don't try anything, or we won't have any choices left. A woman with a red ponytail emerged from the bushes, wielding a dagger and walking toward him. This was a face Mohyuk knew. Shortly after being dragged to this place, during the first week of survival, he and many others had been attacked by fierce dogs and fled for their lives. He never had the chance to ask for her name, but he clearly remembered when she bravely picked up a wooden club to face the beasts, and she was seared into Mohyuk's memory as the only one who fought while the others fled, including him. Breaking the silence, the woman asked, we're in the same year, right? Staring at her with tension, Mohyuk expected her not to remember him and just nodded. She then asked, are you alone? Mohyuk replied coldly, I don't know. What if I am? There was no reason to tell the truth as he couldn't predict what she would do. Frowning, the woman wanted to know how long he had been hunting there. Mohyuk avoided answering and said, judging by your gear, I can tell we're here for the same reason. Let's get straight to the point. Still pointing the dagger at him, the woman moved sideways and upon reaching a tree declared, using this tree as a marker, I'll take the east side of the forest, and you'll take the west side. Since I don't like people crossing the line, be careful. Mohyuk pointed his claws and advised her to do the same. Looking at his claws with interest, she asked, quite interesting. Did you copy that from the movies? Huffing and retracting his claws, Mohyuk retorted, I only care about efficiency. The young woman laughed, amused by the fact that he wasn't being honest in the situation. Avoiding a blush, the protagonist decided to stay silent. She then went back into the bushes, wishing him good luck before going on her way. Watching her leave, Mohyuk cursed her internally. What is wrong with her? Heading to the side of the forest that was his, he grumbled to himself, why did she mock me after appearing out of nowhere? She has no idea what these claws are capable of doing, and what's wrong with liking movies? In the end, he was relieved they hadn't fought, but the encounter had delayed his hunt. Since there were no guarantees that she wouldn't attack him, he stayed alert the whole time. Still, when he thought of her, Mohyuk could only remember the sweet smile she had shown. Blushing slightly, he pushed those thoughts away. Slapping his own face, he muttered, what am I thinking? Forget her. I need to hurry before something else happens. To clear his mind, he raised his head and went back to looking for new prey. At the end of the day, despite reaching his goal, his pace wasn't the only thing affected. The constant vigilance made him much more tired. After the long walk back, he left the forest, almost thinking he had gotten lost. The lack of allies made everything more uncomfortable in moments of danger, and the girl also seemed to be alone. With the skills she had shown, she could certainly be in a good clan or guild, and Mohyuk wondered why she wasn't. Shaking his head, he pushed the matter away once more. He didn't even have the energy to get annoyed, and sleeping would be the best thing to do. However, along the way, he ended up finding a goblin. It had been a while since he had seen one. Happy about the encounter, he declared, "Let me vent my frustration and get a nice bonus on the way out." The goblin, which was walking peacefully, noticed Mohyuk's presence, too late, as the protagonist was already on top of it. As soon as he defeated it, Mohyuk looked for a core, and upon finding it, put it in his mouth. As he shivered from the horrible taste, a female voice came from beside him. The protagonist turned, stunned, to realize someone had seen him. With a look of disbelief and disgust, the girl he had met that morning stared at him and asked, "Is there something wrong with you?" In the middle of consuming the goblin's core, Mohyuk realized the stupid thing he had done. Mohyuk never expected to run into that girl again, especially in that situation. With wide eyes, he wondered if she had already finished her hunt. Looking at her face, he didn't think she'd noticed the core, as she was staring at him with an incredulous look. "You just ate a goblin?" Mohyuk wanted to divert the situation, but the monster's heart in his hand proved otherwise. She pointed at him, yelling, "That's monster meat! Doesn't that make you a psychopath?" Mohyuk threw away the goblin's item, trying to approach the young woman to explain that he had his reasons for doing so. But she stopped him from getting closer, pulling out her dagger. "I never imagined I'd be hunting so close to a crazy bastard." Surprised by the dagger, Mohyuk raised his hands, stating that he could explain. However, she refused to listen, threatening, "You don't even deserve to live." Frowning, Mohyuk asked if she was going to attack him without even hearing his side. Realizing she was a little in the wrong, the young woman held back. Without fear, the protagonist faced her. "If you really want to fight, I'm willing to face you, but avoiding an unnecessary fight will be best for both of us." The young woman began to feel some apprehension, and seeing the feelings she was conveying, Mohyuk gave an ultimatum. "What are you going to do?" Frowning, the young woman stated that eliminating a dangerous bastard would be the best thing to do, but she decided to listen to him because she didn't like unnecessary combat. Putting her dagger away, she stated that she would give him 5 minutes to explain himself. Formulating a response, the protagonist stated that what she had seen was true, but that he didn't do it because he liked it. Frowning, she questioned, mocking, "Then why did you eat it? Is it some kind of otherworldly gourmet food by any chance?" Mohyuk managed to create a last-minute excuse, stating that he was sheltering a wounded professor who had saved his life. "I'm ashamed to say this, but I don't have enough skills to feed us both. To reduce the cost of food, I chose to eat monsters, something my professor taught me to do." Crossing her arms, the young woman refused to believe him, especially because goblins were very similar to humans. Mohyuk's voice became heavy, helping with the act. "It's not easy. You have to do what you can to survive, especially in Helacion. And it's not so bad once you're used to it. Why don't you try it too?" Hearing the sudden suggestion, the red-haired young woman got a complete shiver just thinking about it. Looking at the goblin on the ground, she questioned why he had chosen such a peculiar part to eat. Mohyuk created a new excuse. "It's to avoid vitamin C deficiency. I don't know about you, but it's difficult for me to get vegetables." The young woman shivered even more, but Mohyuk didn't stop talking. "I couldn't stand to eat them at first, but I adapted in order to survive." The young woman ended up staring at him, absorbing the words that seemed to come from someone who had gone through tremendous suffering. Just to reassure her even more, Mohyuk guaranteed, "I don't do this with humans, just so you know." Immediately afterward, Mohyuk drew his claws, stating that he would do what she decided and intimidated her. "But don't expect to defeat me easily. I still have a favor I need to repay." Although she didn't believe him, the young woman wasn't so sure as to accuse him, so she decided to drop the subject. Putting her dagger away, she warned him, "Be careful. If I feel something strange, I'll attack you without hesitation." She also warned him, "Keep your distance from me. Don't enter my field of vision while I'm hunting. I still don't believe you." So she left saying goodbye. "I hope you'll be okay," and muttered, "Crazy bastard." Mohyuk clearly heard what she had said, but he still wiped away the sweat, relieved to have avoided a fight. He thanked the heavens that the story he'd made up on the spot had saved him, and reminded himself to be more careful in the future. Somewhat annoyed at having met such a difficult person, Mohyuk knew that hunting would be complicated from now on. The next morning, the protagonist headed to the city. He stopped by the tower where he bought a few things. He obtained buffalo leather gauntlets, a rank 7 armor type item. That single item had cost 45,000 points, but he tried to keep in mind that having good armor was always a good thing. Such items were useful because it would be possible to use them anywhere. With a little less than 20,000 points remaining, Mohyuk was aiming to get another 70,000 to buy a skill ring he had his eye on. Having gotten used to hunting in the glowing forest, he figured the remaining 4 days would be enough. The only problem he re-encountered upon arriving in the forest was the red-haired girl. She stared at him as soon as they met again. Feeling uncomfortable, Mohyuk wondered if she was waiting for him and questioned her. "You told me not to enter your field of vision so why are you waiting for me? Frowning, the girl stated that they needed to divide the area before they started hunting. Having marked a new tree, she divided the area again, telling him not to invade where she was hunting. Annoyed by Mohyuk's indifference, she huffed as she left. That psychopath bastard is so irritating. However, before she left, Mohyuk called out to her. Annoyed, she turned around. What is it? I'm busy, can't you see? Calmly, Mohyuk made a suggestion, that they introduce themselves to each other so they could call each other by name. However, with a look of contempt, the red-haired girl refused. The girl's hot temper made Mohyuk quite annoyed. He wanted to at least know her name. Having done the right thing for several days, he couldn't understand why she didn't trust him even a little. However, Mohyuk soon remembered his professor's words. Don't trust or be easily influenced by your opponents. The man who failed to do that is in front of you right now. Realizing this was the moment he should follow the advice, Mohyuk would save his kindness for when he left that world. Annoyed by the mess that had arisen from the beginning, he lit a cigarette. However, immediately he heard a voice. Are you sure this time? Realizing someone was approaching, he hid. Two men were walking while one said to the other, the place where they could be is here. However, the second man was already annoyed because they had already searched the entire forest. Mohyuk was surprised to find that more people had not joined the hunt, and he watched them. Looking at the two men with ugly looks, Mohyuk memorized their appearances. Mohyuk remembered the two men. They were also part of the 13th round group, just like him. However, the only thing Mohyuk could recall about them was that both were foreigners. The taller man asked the shorter one, do you think they have enough points for us to steal this time? I don't see the point in hunting like this. His partner quickly confirmed, of course. We can also see if they have good weapons and equipment that we can use. They understood each other's mindset perfectly and laughed about it. Hidden behind a tree, the protagonist understood what they were planning, likely an ambush against the girl he had talked to. Thinking about what he would do, Mohyuk believed the situation would become a headache if he did nothing. If the duo somehow eliminated the girl, they would surely try to claim the entire forest for themselves. Although he didn't know how strong the duo was, as it would be a 2-on-2 fight, Mohyuk figured he could try. The protagonist then formulated a plan and promptly decided to follow it. He would follow the two men and ambush them the moment they tried anything. If he could eliminate one of them by surprise, the other could be easily defeated with the girl's help. As soon as he formulated his plan, Mohyuk froze. He had just planned to eliminate someone without even thinking twice. This might be his first time doing this to a person. However, he felt no hesitation. He wondered if hunting so many goblins had somehow changed him. Stopping to reflect, Mohyuk remembered his fight against Kreakra. In the midst of his thoughts, he realized he would end up losing sight of the duo. Following them while sneaking among trees and bushes, he set aside the issue of hunting a person for the first time. His focus needed to be on something else at that moment. While hiding behind a bush, Mohyuk saw the shorter man speak. They should be around here. I'll take a look around first. Hide when I give the signal. The duo then separated, and walking for only a few seconds, the man who went out to track found his target. The red-haired girl was fighting a giant ant, not realizing what was happening around her. The shorter man then ordered his partner, go right, through the bushes. Mohyuk watched them but couldn't hear everything they were saying. Observing the girl from a distance, he decided to focus on the man who had stayed hidden, believing she could handle the other. Seeing that the man was empty-handed, Mohyuk wondered why he wasn't wielding any weapons. Realizing that the tall, broad-chinned guy was stealthily approaching the girl, Mohyuk concluded that it would be better to stop him first. So he went around so the shorter man wouldn't notice him. The red-haired girl was fighting the ant intensely. Watching her, the shorter man waited for the moment she let her guard down so they could attack her. With a strong sword blow, she managed to eliminate the giant ant, knocking it to the ground. While she rested, the tall man had already hidden behind a closer bush. He didn't realize that Mohyuk was behind him, watching the battle end and the preparation for the attack begin. Mohyuk also prepared himself, using the jewel lizard's camouflage. The goal was to redistribute his stat points, focusing on stamina and agility to finish the battle quickly. Possessing the iron health skill, he kept it saved for when it was needed. Unaware of the ambush, the red-haired girl wiped the sweat from her forehead and looked at the fallen monster. As she bent down to examine what she had obtained, the broad-chinned man pulled out 3 shurikens. Upon seeing the long-range weapons, Mohyuk knew he had to act immediately. The broad-chinned man extended his arm backward, preparing to throw the shurikens. At that exact moment, the protagonist ran toward him. However, the shurikens left his hands before Mohyuk could reach him. All the protagonist could do was shout, "Sneak attack! Get down!" Surprised, the red-haired girl turned around. The short man immediately came out of the bushes, grinding his teeth when he saw that the woman had a partner. The girl couldn't dodge and, caught by surprise, was hit. The broad-chinned man looked in the direction the shout had come from and came face to face with Mo Hyuk, who confronted him. At the same time, the short man attacked the red-haired girl. Despite being wounded, she managed to move, pulling out her dagger to defend herself. Her sword hit the short man's punch and ricocheted back as he had used a skill. Immediately upon blocking her attack, he yelled to his partner, "Hurry up and take him out!" The burly man quickly spun his body, launching a kick at Mo Hyuk. Realizing the attack would be a low kick, Mo Hyuk planned to block it and then run. However, in the middle of the movement, the man lifted his leg higher than he was originally doing. Faced with the martial arts move, Mo Hyuk couldn't dodge. The kick hit Mo Hyuk's face heavily with a loud thud. Upon landing the kick, the man cackled, "Ha ha ha! How does this old man's kick taste? I hope you don't think I'm like the others from the 13th round." However, unexpectedly, the man's foot, which rested on Mo Hyuk's shoulder, didn't seem to hurt him. Even with the foot rubbing on his cheek, Mo Hyuk asked, confused, "Why didn't it hurt at all?" The man who attacked the protagonist ground his teeth, irritated to see his attack fail. He couldn't do anything else, as Cha Mo Hyuk counterattacked with a punch so fast he couldn't dodge. After knocking down his first opponent, Mo Hyuk scratched the back of his neck, commenting to himself, "Maybe because of the stats provided by my new armor, but it seems I don't take any more damage." He was pretty weak too. Meanwhile, the red-haired woman was struggling while trying to fight the short man. She backed away quickly upon seeing him using kickboxing techniques and being much faster than he appeared to be. Seeing the girl's body feel heavier and heavier, he clenched his fist, launching an attack with magic. Unable to dodge, all she could do was put her arms in front of her body to try to block the attack. The man's punch landed on its target, creating a shockwave. The girl flew to the other side of the clearing, falling heavily to the ground. Sarcastically, he praised, "You're fighting well for someone who's injured, but it's time to finish things." After speaking, the man turned, realizing something was wrong. Cha Mo Hyuk, however, was already beside him, with his fist clenched for a punch. Unexpectedly, the man managed to raise his arms, blocking Mo Hyuk's attack. Looking at the boy coldly, he asked, "Why was it the rat who was after us? What did you do to my friend?" Mo Hyuk huffed, mocking the man's thought. For someone who was planning a sneak attack, it's intriguing to call someone a rat. With a furious look, Mo Hyuk made a cynical proposal. "How about I rip that ugly face of yours off too?" Angered by the young man's words, the short man attacked him with a barrage of energy-charged punches. Blocking the attacks, Mo Hyuk gritted his teeth. It was obvious that the man in front of him was a martial artist. His attacks were fast and heavy. His class must be a raider. The man was getting increasingly frustrated, as his blows couldn't get past the boy's defense. Without giving up, he continued to punch. "If we were on Earth, I would have knocked you down a long time ago. All these skills and stats are getting on my nerves. The guy you took down isn't someone who would lose to a stick like you." Even after being told that he had only knocked the other man unconscious, Mo Hyuk did not make him lighten his blows. On the contrary, he only intensified them, breaking his defense. Preparing a strong punch, he even mocked, "Do you want a cookie by any chance?" The strong punch delivered by the raider hit Mo Hyuk heavily in the chest. He coughed hard because even with the skill and armor, it still hurt a lot. However, even falling to his knees, he refused to lose. Seeing the boy's determination, the short man praised him, but soon pulled Mo Hyuk's hair while commenting, "Watching your movements, you must have learned a thing or two, but you've met the wrong opponent." At that moment, Mo Hyuk clenched his fist, preparing for an attack. Before, he asked, "Are you planning to end our lives?" The man who heard Mo Hyuk's question looked at him for a second and began to cackle as if he had heard a joke. His eyes became grim, answering the question, "Of course! What's the point of a surprise attack? Are you going to beg for your life by any chance? If you were planning to do that, why did you want to fight?" Asking the man not to misunderstand him, Mo Hyuk gave him a light punch in the stomach. The man laughed, scoffing at the blow, but Mo Hyuk's gaze had become even darker. Giving the man one last chance, he repeated the question. The man cursed and mocked Mo Hyuk for being so idiotic. With a look of pity, the protagonist looked at the man and said goodbye. Before the man could realize it, his mouth was already full of a liquid that tasted like iron. Pulling out his claws, Mo Hyuk allowed him to fall to the ground before them. Cursing the weapons, the man lost consciousness. In the end, the protagonist did what he didn't want to. However, the feeling was the same as hunting a goblin. Having won was a relief, and the pain in his own body was really the only thing he felt. Retracting his claws, he questioned whether this change had been caused by all the tension of the last few weeks. While Mo Hyuk was in contemplation, the red-haired young woman approached him. Not understanding exactly what had happened, she asked if he had saved her. With his confirmation, the young woman irritably kicked the raider on the ground, raving, "It turns out I taught them a lesson for what they did before, and this is how they repay me." Curious, the girl asked Mo Hyuk why he had helped her. Stating that he himself could be the target, the protagonist said that he had made a logical decision. Not knowing what to say, she scratched the back of her neck for a moment and, avoiding eye contact because she was blushing slightly, murmured, "Thank you for helping me." Mohyuk felt as if an arrow had hit him. He stood as stiff as a statue, scaring the girl. Putting his hand behind his ear, he approached her. "Sorry, I didn't hear you right. Can you say that again?" Getting annoyed because of the teasing, she yelled, "Don't mess with me!" Showing his injured arms, Mohyuk asked if she couldn't make a little effort. She gritted her teeth hard before declaring, "I will repay this debt, thank you!" With an innocent smile, the protagonist claimed not to have heard correctly, asking her to repeat herself. Grimly, she told him to stop, scaring him to the point of apologizing. While they were arguing, the duo heard a groan. The broad-chinned man had gotten up, in disbelief that the one who was supposed to be the strongest among the third-round players had been eliminated. Seeing how the man approached even with his partner being eliminated, Mohyuk thought he was stupid. Unexpectedly, the protagonist saw the girl walk toward the broad-chinned man. He didn't notice the furious look she was showing. However, the broad-chinned man noticed and trembled frighteningly. He quickly turned, trying to flee. However, picking up one of the shurikens that had been thrown at her, the girl prepared to throw it, even with Mohyuk yelling at her not to do it. The shuriken cut through the air, flying toward the man, who felt himself being hit. Receiving a cut that looked like a red streak, he fell to the ground. Thus, the girl eliminated the other man from the duo. Gritting his teeth with an icy look, Mohyuk questioned her as to why she had done that. She didn't bother to answer. "Since they attacked us first, I'm returning the favor. You also eliminated the short fatty," Mohyuk raved, trying to defend his actions. "That was different. I had no choice. There was no need for you to do that against someone who was fleeing." Mohyuk couldn't believe he was annoyed. He didn't even know why he was yelling. The girl slowly turned, looking at Mohyuk with an eagle-eyed stare. "Hey, there's something wrong with that. It's not like you put any effort into stopping me." Faced with the accusation, Mohyuk found himself without a response, and the only thing he heard was the rustling of the tree leaves due to his deafening silence. Placing his hand on the chest of the man he had just eliminated, Mohyuk absorbed his energy. As he absorbed it, he asked the girl if she would be all right, and arrogantly crossing her arms, she replied, "Yes, don't make me repeat myself." Currently, he was performing a brand harvest. This function was activated by placing one's hand on a lifeless person's brand, causing that person's points to be harvested by the person above them. Although he could obtain someone's points, it was not possible to obtain their inventory items. Thanking the young woman for letting him have the points, Mohyuk called it the price she paid for his help. However, avoiding looking at him, she retorted, "That's different." When he looked confused, she explained, "Us fighting together and you warning me of the ambush are different things. This is normal, so don't say anything. You have to calculate correctly for me to be satisfied." Mohyuk was about to complain when she made another demand, to help her go home. Even though he was also hurt, Mohyuk allowed her to put her arm over his shoulders, helping her walk. Although they could have returned after being healed, Mohyuk was annoyed at losing time. Sensing his thoughts, the young woman quickly warned, "Are you trying to make me feel guilty? I already gave you all the brands." The protagonist corrected himself, revealing that he had overheard the conversation of two men who apparently had many good things. As they walked, they talked about the subject, wondering what they might have saved up since they were strong. The young woman couldn't help but get annoyed when she thought about what happened. "If it wasn't an ambush, a pig like that would never have hurt me." Mohyuk found the situation quite calm, as they had broken the ice, but the look she had given him earlier was still stuck in his mind. Seeing her helper silent and with a gloomy look, the girl asked what he was thinking about. Changing the subject, the protagonist stated that he had already forgotten what he was thinking about, making the girl ask how old he had gotten. Despite being annoyed that she always insulted him, Mohyuk expressed a slight smile, commenting, "I felt like you must have received several proposals, so I was wondering why you are alone." Frowning, she asked why he was curious about that. Mohyuk was very direct. "Well, because you are very skilled, but you don't have to answer if you don't want to." With a furrowed look and a melancholic tone, she revealed, "I've been in one before, in 6 Pole." That name was familiar to Mohyuk. This was the family founded by 6 Koreans with different names, a powerful organization formed only by Koreans. Believing that this had been a good opportunity, Mohyuk asked why she hadn't stayed there. The frustration in the girl intensified, and looking away, she hid the story. "I don't want to answer that." Although he understood, Mohyuk rolled his eyes since she could have said nothing from the beginning. In the end, he ended up getting irritated, thinking about going back quickly to heal, which made the girl feel even more pain because they were going faster. When the orange sky was already getting dark due to the sunset, they arrived at the city tower. Mohyuk stated out loud how tired he was from helping the girl walk, making her apologize once more in an irritated tone. Arriving in front of the tower, the girl unexpectedly pushed him. "I can go in alone, I'm fine now." Mohyuk was shocked to be treated this way, since he had helped her, and running as fast as she could, she raved back, "I helped you too!" Telling himself that he should have pretended not to know her, Mohyuk turned to leave until he heard the girl's voice. "Oh, it's So-young!" When he turned around, he saw her say, "You said we should call each other by our names." Scratching her cheek while avoiding eye contact, she stated, "An So-young, that's my name." The protagonist also introduced himself to her. "I'm Mohyuk, Cha Mohyuk." Unexpectedly, So-young smiled upon hearing his name. Thus, the red-haired girl said goodbye under the last orange rays of the sun. Mohyuk was speechless at the sight until Krusta approached to wake him up. The protagonist was startled by the city lord, who, upon seeing him injured, stated while crossing her arms, "The price of the special cure is 10,000 points." After healing Mohyuk, Krusta asked if he wanted anything else, and so he revealed that he had obtained 2 brands. With an excited smile, Krusta did not hide her surprise. She ended up commenting, "I think you figured out how to live well. Getting points by hunting humans is much better, isn't it? You're pretty quick for an idiot, Cha Mohyuk. Monsters are just fantasies. The key to survival is hunting other competitors." A slight irritation arose in the protagonist's gaze. He remembered both the short man and the broad-chinned man who had lost their lives, as well as So-young's sharp look, stating that he had done nothing to stop him. Gritting his teeth, Mohyuk released his frustration by pushing Krusta. Being direct, he lied. "I just ended up finding 2 people who fought each other. Shut up and give me the points." Wiping her shoulders where Mohyuk had touched her, she ignored what he had done. Touching the brand on Mohyuk's chest, she transferred the results of the harvest he made. Upon leaving the tower, the protagonist sighed. Scratching his head, he cursed, "Damn bastard, trying to ruin my mood, which is already in the abyss." Looking around, he looked for So-young, but she seemed to have already left. Thus, opening the points window, he was impressed. He had over 106,000 points now, because together, those 2 hunters had 80,000. Now Mohyuk could buy the skill he wanted. He had many desires to the point that his heart was in ecstasy, but it was time to look forward. Looking at his own hands, he remembered how he had strengthened himself without waste. He hoped to get even stronger eventually. Stopping his walk, he looked at the large and imposing tower, reverberating in his heart his deepest desire. "I'm going to make these bastards give me an answer personally." The next day in the forest, a giant frog rested peacefully. It noticed a strange movement and used its long tongue to launch an attack. However, the frog's target had moved to its back without it noticing. With a single claw attack, Cha Mohyuk destroyed the beast's mind. The frog fell to the ground, already unable to move. Looking at his prey, Mohyuk smiled happily, celebrating, "This is awesome." Despite losing much more blood than expected, the skill Mohyuk used was well worth it. Baroque Dreadful Charge, a unique ability that duplicated its user's stats for 5 minutes, with the exception of magic power. It was a simple but effective skill. With it, he could hunt monsters in the glowing forest with the same ease as hunting goblins. Sneaking up behind a stone golem, Mohyuk waited for the right moment. He tried to charge before the monster noticed his presence. However, the golem still discovered him, but before it could turn around, it was already too late. The first disadvantage of the skill was its short duration. The effects of the skill alert were surprisingly noticeable. Not only did Mohyuk's stats return to normal, but his body also started to feel heavy. It was necessary to get used to this feeling and have a sense of how long the skill lasted. Using magic to climb the golem's body, Mohyuk thought about the second negative point, the long cooldown time due to his low magic power. Unlike what people knew as magic power did not use mana points. It only had a cooldown time. With high magic power, skills became more powerful, and the cooldown time decreased. Trying to figure out how long the cooldown time would be, Mohyuk destroyed the stone golem with a single attack, making it drop its crown. Feeling a bit of a headache after using the skill, Mohyuk stopped to rest. As soon as the headache went away, he could use the skill once more. Meanwhile, he harvested the monster's cores and pearls. The current cooldown time seemed to be 20 minutes, and about 40 minutes when combined with the camouflage skill. Although the time was long, it was well worth it. Mohyuk needed to get stronger, but during the long day of hunting, that skill had become his trump card, saved for when it was needed. Having experienced it, he imagined that this combination would be useful soon when tests appeared. After the hunt ended, Mohyuk headed to a tower. However, halfway there, he noticed something. Several people, wounded and tired, were leaving the area. The forced hunt had ended. Seeing so many people return, Mohyuk was annoyed. "I guess my days of glory are over. I guess hunting Koilos will be my only option from now on." Although he had made a great profit, it was a shame he couldn't enjoy it anymore. Preparing to sell a few things before returning home, Mohyuk heard someone call him. Yangchul approached with a forced smile. "Are you here to see me? Thank you so much." Cha Mohyuk couldn't believe he always ran into that lunatic. Without much enthusiasm, he replied, "It seems nothing wrong happened." Laughing, Yangchul questioned, "It would be much better for you if it had, wouldn't it?" Mohyuk tried to state that he had misunderstood, but keeping the smile on his face, Yangchul calmed him down. "It's just a joke. Don't take it so seriously." However, his gaze became grim when he bellowed, "Why didn't you come?" Yangchul's change in attitude caught Mohyuk's attention, who frowned and replied, "I didn't want to go. Is there a problem with that? Yongchul put his hand on Mohyuk's shoulder, responding with a look of contempt. Of course there is. I said that depending on what you did, my attitude would change. I thought you would cooperate and at least pretend to participate, but you didn't come. I'm disappointed. Very disappointed. Yongchul stared at Mohyuk with a fury to the point that the veins on his forehead were popping, and warned, "You won't last long alone. It will be better to stay close to someone. That's why I'm going to give you one last chance." Pushing Mohyuk back, Yongchul said there would be another forced hunt in a month, ordering him to participate. With a look of superiority, he concluded, "If you pretend so you won't be eliminated, I'll finish you off." In silence, Mohyuk felt that there was something wrong with Yongchul, who was much more incisive than before. Mohyuk's frowning gaze irritated Yongchul, who was about to attack him when someone called him. A man with a cloak shouted, "Stop talking to your friend and come on. We have things to do, don't we?" Annoyed that he had to go, Yongchul warned one last time for Mohyuk to think carefully and not to forget about the next forced hunt. For Mohyuk, Yongchul's change in attitude was quite strange. Especially since Yongchul wanted them to work together, it didn't seem right. Thinking a little, Mohyuk came to a conclusion. Yongchul's change had been caused by something that Mohyuk himself had also done, the elimination of someone. 4 weeks passed, and as evening approached, as did the dawn in the sky, only one light in a hut was seen. Several dishes had been prepared for the duo inside to have dinner. Surprising his professor with the small feast, Mohyuk stated with a smile, "I thought I should go all out." Reminding the professor that he had earned some money lately, Mohyuk revealed that he had spent some of it while buying equipment. Mohyuk's professor tried to warn him, advising that he would need to save some money for when it was needed, but this helped him discover how Mohyuk would live if he were on Earth. Perhaps because he hadn't eaten something greasy for a while, Mohyuk's professor felt full quickly and decided to smoke a cigarette. Remembering that there were only 3 days left until the next hunt, the professor commented that time had passed quickly. As the smoke spread through the house, the professor prepared to say something important. "Mohyuk, as soon as the forced hunt begins, don't hold back." The protagonist nodded to the professor's instruction. The professor continued to warn him, "You know about that damn Bae Yongchul, don't you? You must have noticed, but he already knows that although life here is horrible, the forced hunt is even worse, because there was so much more to obtain in the forced hunt. It was much more brutal, and Yongchul had learned this by hunting other people." While Mohyuk helped him smoke, the professor warned, "I know you're a good person, but in there you need to change. I know you're already prepared for this, right?" The protagonist was surprised to find that his professor already knew that he had eliminated someone. With his head down, he confirmed, "You are right. I will keep in mind what you just said." As the young man had agreed, his professor smiled, satisfied that he was willing to change his mindset. Apologizing for bringing up such a heavy topic, the professor suggested they go back to eating. Starting with the roasted chicken, Mohyuk tore off one of the thighs and held it out for the professor to bite. Despite never having told the professor what had happened, Mohyuk already imagined that he had some idea about the matter. He told himself that he would have to do everything to return alive. That night, Mohyuk swore that he would do everything possible to leave Helacion with his professor. A few days passed, and everyone who would participate in the forced hunt was taken to a portal among the dry trees. Several people were waiting to be able to pass through the portal, and among them was Mohyuk. Staring at the portal while biting his lips, he found himself facing what would be a great change. In front of the portal stood about 30 people. Among them were Mohyuk, An So-young, and also Yongchul. Mohyuk tried not to be nervous, repeating to himself that he had become stronger. So with confidence, he stepped through the portal. A great flash hit the protagonist's eyes, and as he slowly opened them, he was met with a huge moon. Standing in this new world, he wondered what would come next. A small explosion happened in the sky, and a tiny being in a suit appeared. "Hello everyone, how are you?" The small, dark being with large wings and a single horn on its forehead greeted them. "There are some people here I've seen before and also new faces. I'm Karu, the executor of the forced hunt. Nice to meet you." Immediately, Yongchul bellowed, "Cut the small talk!" Seeing Yongchul, Karu commented on how energetic he seemed. Watching the scene, Mohyuk wondered if Karu was someone who disguised the seriousness of things as if they were jokes. Inviting everyone, Karu presented the new location for the forced hunt challenge. A platform glowed, its light rising to the heavens and surprising everyone. A large tower appeared, and Karu presented it. This is the so-called Tower of Time. Pretty cool, isn't it? Both Mohyuk and So-young were apprehensive about the imposing structure, as it was the first time they had seen it. Flapping his wings, Karu stated that there was no real meaning to the name and explained, "You will complete the forced hunt if you reach the 5th floor. Simple, isn't it?" Then he explained the rules. The 5th floor would only open on the 10th day. It would not be possible to enter before or after that. Laughing, he added, "The latecomers will unfortunately disappear along with the tower forever. It can be painful, so take that into consideration." Mohyuk already expected this kind of attitude. All the dark beings were the same. Revealing that he would give everyone watches so they wouldn't lose track of time, Karu asked them not to worry about it. In the second rule, he warned that they would need to personally eliminate 100 monsters each to be able to enter the 5th floor, so there was no need to rush right to the top. In the third rule, he explained that in the brain of each monster, there were coins called tower tokens, each worth 1,000 points as well as several skill rings. With an almost pitiful look, he warned, "If you're lazy, you may return empty-handed. To make it easier, if you get someone else's watch, you will receive their score. Keep that in mind and choose what's easiest for you." The people absorbed Karu's words. In short, the dark being was saying that instead of trying hard to hunt monsters, they could hunt those who had already done the work. Having explained 3 rules, Karu raised his finger to reveal the last one. You cannot stay on the same floor for more than 1 day. Otherwise, your location will be revealed to everyone, including the monsters. The last rule left everyone in silence. A man next to Yangchul complained since this would harm large groups, making it impossible to camp on a floor. Yangchul clicked his tongue and grumbled, as expected of these guys. Still, he cheered up his partner, reminding him that they were the strongest group. But, in fact, Yangchul was referring only to himself. His plan was simple: use everyone he could and come out victorious in the end. Further back, So-young analyzed the rules and concluded that, by forcing the participants to move constantly, Karu wanted to induce confrontations. Mo-hyuk, on the other hand, saw the situation as terrible. Isolated, all the groups had already been formed. Having avoided participating in the first forced hunt made this one a nightmare that came back to haunt him. There was no reason to get close to Bae Yangchul, as it would be a miracle not to end up being used and discarded. Looking to the side, the protagonist saw the only person he might have a chance to form a team with, An So-young. Sighing, he blinked slowly to organize his thoughts. As soon as he opened his eyes again, he realized that So-young was walking toward him with a determined look. She stopped in front of Cha Mo-yuk, startling him to the point of making him back away. Unexpectedly, she extended her hand and made a proposal. "Let's do this together." Surprised, Mo-hyuk was speechless and couldn't answer. So-young then explained her view. "You're an abandoned egg, aren't you? It will be difficult to complete this hunt alone, so we have no choice." Pressing him, she asked him to make a decision, to say what he wanted to do. A slight sigh accompanied by a smile appeared on Mo-hyuk's lips. He extended his hand back and agreed, "Yes, we have no choice. Let's do this together." Instead of shaking his hand, So-young grabbed him by the shirt and pulled him, telling him to run. Seeing him confused, she turned her head and yelled, "The briefing is over! What are you doing? Hurry up!" Surprised by the action, Mo-hyuk followed her. Many were astonished to see a duo getting ahead. Yangchul, among them, gritted his teeth, furious at being left behind. He immediately ordered his team, "Let's go." The fact that Mo-hyuk ignored his offer hurt Yangchul's ego, but he decided not to care. He was already planning to discard him anyway. Still, he swore that he would no longer make things easy for Cha Mo-hyuk and that he would eliminate him as soon as possible. Scratching his head, as he still had more announcements to make, Karu was annoyed by the human's haste. Wrapping himself in energy to leave, he decided to inform the rest of the rules only to those who were still at the entrance, wishing everyone good luck. Upon entering the tower, Mo-hyuk wanted to discuss a few things first, although it was important to hurry. So-young, however, stated that there was no time for that, as acting fast would give them more of an advantage than talking. Realizing that So-young had not considered the possibility of falling into a trap, Mo-hyuk lightly hid his own face and commented to himself, "The future will be grim, very grim." Changing the subject, So-young called his attention. Looking at several stairs, she asked, "Where do we go first?" They looked at the stairs, but Mo-hyuk commented that they didn't know anything about them. It was at that moment that Karu appeared behind them, shouting, "Bingo!" The duo was startled by the dark being, who laughed, explaining that the level of all floors was the same, so there was no need to overthink it. Furious, So-young questioned if Karu had some illness that forced him to scare humans. Laughing to relax, Karu didn't care. For Mo-hyuk, the dark being had a different kind of humor from the one Jack possessed. Curious, the protagonist asked if the tower they were in had a similar structure to the village tower. Surprised, Karu asked what he meant, hearing Mo-hyuk's question. Does each floor have a separate dimensional space for each team? Mo-hyuk explained that Krosta always appeared separately for everyone, so something like that might be possible. The dark being confirmed the information and asked why he wanted to know. Stating that he thought Karu had more things to say, Mo-hyuk asked, "We don't have to worry about others coming after us, right? As long as you don't want them to know which floor we went to." Laughing, Karu stated that he liked Cha Mo-hyuk and snapped his fingers. In the next moment, the watches on his and So-young's wrists were created. Warning that the watches would show the date and time, Karu asked them to take care of them, teaching them how to use them. Press the button once to see the monster kill count. twice to see the location information. He also explained that by pressing the watch, it would be possible to see what floor they were on, as well as the coordinates. By pressing 3 times, they could see the tower's ranking, and the top-ranked players would receive prizes. Every day, the monsters and human bodies would be reset, so items not collected in time would disappear. Karoo warned that if they were in combat with many enemies, the situation would continue, so the eliminated ones would not disappear immediately. While Mohyuk was looking at the watch, Karoo asked what floor the duo would like to go to. Before they chose, So-young questioned Karoo to know if he had failed to mention something. Asking them to trust him, the dark being stated that it would be boring if no one trusted him. The question of trusting a dark being did not cross So-young's mind, who let Mohyuk ask this time. I normally choose the third option in multiple choice questions. And you, So-young? Being good at studying, So-young didn't usually choose randomly, but there was no alternative this time. Observing the young man the clown had talked about, Karoo had to agree that he was funny. Suddenly the dark being realized he had forgotten something. Laughing to himself, he commented, I forgot to tell you about the rule that the stairs change places every day, and that on the 9th day, everyone will be teleported to the first floor. Well, that's not so important, but I won't tell the others to keep the competition fair. Unaware of what was to come, So-young led the way up the stairs. They soon reached the 3rd floor. Looking around, they saw a scenario similar to the inside of a pyramid, like a theme park. Clicking the watch to check the location, Mohyuk discovered that it was made in X and Y coordinates. Walking through the stone ruins, So-young realized that the X coordinate indicated whether they had gone left or right, while the Y coordinate indicated whether they had gone forward or backward. In addition, each unit was equivalent to 1 meter traveled. Having to stay in this labyrinth for 10 days without being able to smoke, Mohyuk felt that he had fallen into disgrace. Furious, So-young warned him not to do anything that could reveal their location, especially with smoke. So, they started by checking the location of the stairs, the most precious information for when they needed to return. Then, looking around, they looked for monsters. They soon found a standing alligator, dressed as a Roman soldier. Having seen similar monsters at the entrance of the ruined castle, So-young did not expect to find them there. Surprised by So-young's level, Mohyuk realized that she had already hunted in high-level fields. She revealed that she had only taken a look, but if she could hunt those monsters, she wouldn't be worried. In the end, they observed the alligator soldier. Mohyuk knew they were difficult opponents for beginners. It would be complicated to deal with them without enough strength. Despite the ruined castle being a complicated place to hunt, due to the number of monsters, the protagonist was confident in facing just one of them. The duo agreed to advance, with Mohyuk warning that he would attack first, and So-young would intervene when there was an opening. As soon as he advanced, Mohyuk activated the jewel lizard's camouflage. His goal was to distribute the points in health, strength, and stamina, leaving the rest in agility. With the help of iron health and health maintenance, his health regeneration was doubled. With the addition of Baroque Dreadful Charge, Mohyuk saw his agility temporarily reach rank 6. Full of energy, he felt the power overflow in his body and shouted, catching the lizard's attention. The lizard soldier looked back, confused, but all he saw was a human attacking him by surprise. The lizard raised its sword, but Mohyuk knew it was too late. With a claw attack, he passed by the lizard, dodging its attack. The monster was hit in the shoulder, but its armor protected it from being defeated. Mohyuk prepared for a new attack. Even wounded, the lizard soldier positioned itself for combat. As the monster roared, Mohyuk advanced at full speed. So-young was surprised by the speed he showed, passing through the monster's defenses and showing a combat far beyond what was expected for a rank 7. Mohyuk struck the monster's shoulder again, making it scream. With 2 attacks in the same spot, the lizard couldn't take it and fell. Despite the sigh, the battle was easier than Mohyuk had imagined. Confused, So-young questioned, "Do you even need me?" Mohyuk thought she was joking, but she corrected, "I'm serious. I've never seen anyone so fast before." Mohyuk explained that it was thanks to his skill, something with a short duration. Suddenly, he fell silent, scaring the girl. Worried, she told him to just say what he had to say. Looking at the monster, Mohyuk commented, "Do you remember my eating habits?" So-young was confused at first, but a shock of reality hit her when she realized what he intended to do. She couldn't believe he would do that there, like a lunatic. Making an excuse, Mohyuk stated that he needed to eat at the end of each battle so he wouldn't feel unwell. He bowed a little, trying to convince her. "It won't take long, I swear. We need to collect the tokens anyway, right?" So-young, even irritated by something so crazy, agreed. So, Mohyuk approached the body of the lizard warrior. Remembering that his professor had said that such monsters had cores, he opened the body to search. After some time, Mohyuk managed to find the core, which shone like a pearl. He promptly put it in his mouth, scaring So-young. Immediately, Mohyuk received 0.27% resistance rate, a much higher value than what he obtained when hunting Koilos. Curious, So-young asked if he had enjoyed himself and questioned him about the token. Realizing he had forgotten the most important thing, a fearfully grim look appeared in So-young's eyes. There was no way to change a lunatic. Finding a small coin, Mohyuk thought that must be the tower token. So-young told him to put the token away, which made Mohyuk ask how they would split the tokens. The idiotic question irritated the girl. "There are only 2 of us here. How hard is it to split them? We'll just divide our earnings 50-50. Having decided, So-young took the lead to go to another area. The faster they hunted, the greater the chance of survival. Although disgusted, Mohyuk had no other choice. He couldn't leave the monster cores behind. There would be a limit to his excuses. He would like to avoid sharing information about the cores as much as possible, but he might have to reveal it to So-young sooner or later. Having fallen behind, Mohyuk ran toward her, asking her to go slower in case someone appeared. On the 2nd floor of the tower, a battle was taking place. A group was fighting fierce dogs that walked on 2 legs. With good coordination, they managed to defeat them. After the victory, they praised each other. Talking, they came to the conclusion that this hunt would be easier than the first, and that they would be able to reach 100 kills each, as long as they kept up the pace. Watching the group in that stone castle-like room, Youngchul smiled internally. These idiots. Have fun while you can. I'll be sure to finish each and every one of you. There's no reason to go to the 5th floor with them. The reward will be mine. For Youngchul, the main point of the tower was not survival, but the ranking. According to Karu, there were rewards that were absurdly worth the effort. Looking at the kill ranking, Youngchul didn't believe anyone would be able to reach the goal. The forced hunts served to take advantage of each other, and in the end, only one would stay on top. Confidently, Youngchul aimed for that place. While thinking about the time, his partner approached with a relieved smile. "It looks like things are going very well." Confused, Youngchul asked what he meant, and the man revealed, "Since the monsters are weak and the place is spacious, we may not find other teams. It will be much easier than I imagined." Giving a standard response, Youngchul cursed his partner internally. "This brat is an idiot. He's happy not to find anyone. Are we at a picnic by any chance?" The young man continued, "Isn't it all thanks to you? If it weren't for you, we wouldn't be able to do all this. Seriously, what were those people thinking?" Confused, Youngchul asked who he was talking about. The man remembered Mohyuk and the girl who was with him. "You know, those 2 who ran off. I still don't understand why they rejected your offer." Realizing who he was talking about, Youngchul laughed, stating that the guy in the duo was just a weakling he had helped. "I wanted to continue helping him, but this time he ran off with a girl. What an idiot, ha ha ha." Remembering that Mohyuk was also in the tower, Youngchul internally swore that he would not spare him, turning him into mincemeat. The person Youngchul was talking about was currently fighting a lizard man with a large sword. With his claws in front of his body, Mohyuk blocked the heavy attack. The protagonist firmed his claws, trapping the sword and blocking the great strength of the lizard warrior. At that moment, he heard So-young scream, telling him to get out of the way. Imprinting strength, Mohyuk pushed the sword and the lizard back. The lizard was going to attack again, but it heard the sound of footsteps. So-young, carrying a shield and a sword overflowing with energy, advanced fiercely. With the magical warrior's attack, she extended her sword in a long lunge. The lizard man hastily raised his sword to block, but the young woman's sharp eyes showed that there was no way to escape. The monster's loaded sword simply broke before her attack, which tore through everything in front of her, including the lizard man. Mohyuk was speechless at the incredible attack. Defeating the monster, she commented, "Our styles are different, but I think I'm doing well, aren't I?" Mohyuk smiled at her humility. "You even said that I wouldn't need you, but it's you who has become a walking finisher." Seeing how she had attacked from behind without hesitation, Mohyuk internally changed his plans. So-young collected the tower token, while Mohyuk, in the corner of the room, ate. While reminding the girl to collect everything she needed, he ate the core in secret. Receiving 0.54% permanent strength, Mohyuk observed the situation. The rate of cores within the lizard warriors was high, and the growth was equally fast. He believed that as long as he kept up the pace, he would become stronger than he expected. The only problem Mohyuk saw was the way he fought. He remembered that So-young had said she was a raider. If she used her combat skills, even blocking would not be difficult. Therefore, Mohyuk decided to be careful when she was using skills. Despite wanting to trust So-young, he always remembered his professor's words. Therefore, when she finished the collection, he suggested, "Let's change our plans." Hearing his words, So-young questioned whether he didn't trust her. Avoiding the question, Mohyuk stated that he wanted to do things as efficiently as possible. So-young was silent, analyzing his words and expressions. Sighing while crossing her arms, she questioned him if he had something in mind. Seeing So-young act in a more pleasant way than he expected, he pointed out, "Our current plan is, I run and create an opening for you to attack and finish the target, right? Instead of attacking head-on every time we find a soldier, I'm going to attract his attention, making him give you space. That way, you can attack." Mohyuk's plan served so that, in the worst case, he could also attack the monster, as he would be surrounded from both sides. Having explained the plan, Mohyuk asked what she thought. Thinking a little, So-young replied, "It's not bad. bad. You're less worried that I'll attack you, and that will make the kill division between us fairer. Although he tried to say he wasn't worried about her, So-young turned to assume a position in the ruins. Stopping before she walked away completely, she turned and stared at him. Really? Surprised by the blunt question, Cha Mo-hyuk fell silent. With a frown, she rebuked him. I don't trust you either. We are together for our own benefit. There's no reason to make excuses like that, so stop overthinking and let's work so we can get out of here, got it? Mo-hyuk couldn't avoid the discussion and saw So-young walk away. Without him being able to see, the young woman showed an extremely annoyed expression. In the end, they separated in the Greek ruins. Soon after finding another monster, the protagonist caught its attention, once again blocking the sword with his claws. Burly, the monster tried to push him, but he resisted. Since the sword couldn't hit the target, the lizard advanced with its long mouth, trying to bite Mo-hyuk. Staring at the lizard soldier, Mo-hyuk was not intimidated. Opening his arms, he pushed his claws, also pushing the monster. Creating an opening by making it disarm its defense, the protagonist managed to land several punches with his claws activated, piercing the monster. The attacks did not stop, as there was a large armor protecting the alligator soldier. Destroying the armor, Mo-hyuk grabbed it and lifted it fiercely with his claws, then threw it to the ground with all his might, crushing the monster's will to fight, as well as his own. Pulling his claws back, the protagonist wiped his wet face. Having seen how Mo-hyuk fought, So-young approached while commenting, I knew it. Those claws are because you watch too many movies. Irritated at being mocked, he hastily stated that she was wrong. He also accused her. Besides, what's with your pose? Get back to work. Remembering that they had only defeated 3 monsters, So-young warned him not to get too excited. Watching Mo-hyuk, she gave credit to his strength. He was much stronger compared to when they first met. In the current situation, it looked more like he was playing with the lizard soldiers. She even wondered if it was possible to become so much stronger in such a short amount of time. Watching Mo-hyuk, who had not found a core this time, So-young was faced with her own internal problems. They had both gotten a lot of points in the glowing forest, but she still didn't understand how he had gotten so much stronger, maybe because of the person he talked about taking care of. Still, there should be a limit when it came to stats. While So-young was still in deep thought, Mo-hyuk woke her up, placing a coin in front of her and reminding her, What's wrong with you? Take it. It's your turn. Being questioned about why she hadn't noticed before, So-young hastily took the token from his hand. Don't worry about it. I stayed quiet because it was you. If it were anyone else, it would be different. So-young's ambiguous comment surprised them both. Backing away hastily, Mo-hyuk was about to ask what she meant when she changed the subject. Aren't you hungry? Why don't we rest a little and eat? I'm starving too. Mo-hyuk tried to insist on the subject, but she started yelling, We need to eat if we want to hunt. Sit down. Sit down immediately. Sighing, he did as she did and sat on the ground. Curious, So-young asked how much water he had, as she had only brought enough for herself. Being questioned, Mo-hyuk revealed that he only had 1 bottle. Surprised, So-young thought he was crazy. Only 1 bottle? Did you think they were going to hand out water here or something? That was exactly what Mo-hyuk thought, and he showed her a fountain on one of the walls. There was a sculpture on the wall of a lion's head spitting water into a stone jar. Seeing it, So-young asked, still in disbelief, Do you trust that water? What if you get sick from drinking it? Her comment made Mo-hyuk realize what she didn't have. Opening his shirt pocket, the protagonist took out a small vial. See, I have some purifying powder. While So-young was looking at the item, Mo-hyuk explained, Most water will become drinkable with this. It's extremely cheap and important to have a stock of this item. My professor taught me how to use it. So-young realized he was right. With the exception of the essentials, she didn't even think about anything besides equipment and skills. Revealing that he had enough purifying powder for the entire forced hunt, Mo-hyuk handed her one of the vials. Surprised, So-young wanted to pay him for the item, but he reassured her, I have several anyway. I bought a lot just in case it was needed. This only costs 500 points. So-young wanted to return the item, not wanting to be in debt to Mo-hyuk, but he retorted, That's exactly why I'm giving this to you. Leaving her confused, Mo-hyuk explained, After getting here, I've thought a lot about trust. I thought it was strange how you managed to get used to everything so quickly, especially when those 2 thugs tried to approach you. You didn't hesitate to eliminate an opponent, and you didn't change after that either. I kept wondering if this would have been possible if we weren't in Helacion. It's a world completely separate from ours. Maybe even the way we think has changed too. However, not everything changes, at least not yet. Confused, she questioned what his thought had to do with the current situation. Mo-hyuk was sincere, stating that he could only think that way thanks to her. So-young was surprised as Mo-hyuk knew a lot about her more than she expected. You didn't hesitate from the beginning, as if you knew what needed to be done. You have the strength that I don't possess. That's why you didn't hesitate, which made me fear that we were changing too quickly. But you realized that there is a purpose in trying to protect something you believe in. Even now, nothing has changed. With a calm smile, Mo-hyuk stated that they could think that she didn't want to be in debt, but for him, that was the only source of trust in the new world. To survive, he hoped he could protect those they considered precious to them. Leaving So-young a bit shy as she thanked him for showing her a new side of life, Mo-hyuk offered the water purifier once more. Winking at the girl, he, however, reminded her, "That doesn't mean I trust you. Trust and gratitude are two different things, got it?" Irritated by the way he ended his speech, she took the vial and was silent for a moment, until she thanked him. "I'll make good use of it." Swallowing a small seed, So-young commented, "These condensed energy capsules are great, but they don't give the same sense of satisfaction as real food." With a mouthful of food, Mo-hyuk remembered that he had told her to try eating what he ate. He offered her some rainbow snake meat, but she rejected it vigorously. While Mo-hyuk looked at the watch, the girl questioned why he was checking the point ranking, since he wouldn't enter the ranking anyway. In the ranking, the protagonist saw many names that were concerning. Seeing his professor doing well, but not even entering the top 3, he wondered how it would be possible to enter the ranking. Mo-hyuk's professor had assured him that that place was like a nightmare. He revealed to the young man that he had reached peaks where no one could imagine reaching, although he had never told him to not show off. Song Jungmin told the young man that he had selected the Raider class and acted according to its specifications, which was why he had managed to go so far. He didn't want to advise him to be bad, but to have greater determination if he wanted to survive. When difficult times came, he would need to do what was necessary. Showing one of his legs without the bottom half, in addition to his limp arms, Mo-hyuk's professor showed what happened to those who did not have the necessary determination. Feeling a bit down, Mo-hyuk thought about the whole situation. Getting up first, So-young advised her partner to do the same to find the exit. Stating to himself that there was no reason to be nice, Mo-hyuk reminded himself that he also didn't need to be a villain. He didn't want to become someone like Bae Young-chol. Within the possibilities, he intended to get stronger and survive his own way, continuing to do what he was doing the best he could. With confidence on his face, Mo-hyuk told himself that he would become stronger. After walking for a long time through the ruins, the duo soon found a staircase. Tired, they stretched or rested as they were extremely sweaty. 13 hours had already passed since they entered the tower. Looking at the coordinates, So-young commented that they had traveled almost 5 kilometers in a straight line and that they would need to walk another 2,500 meters, although it was not an exact measurement. The short distance surprised Mo-hyuk, as they had walked for 13 hours. He even wondered if there was an exit to the labyrinth. So-young believed that the tower had some magical mechanism to connect different areas or something like that. Stretching once again, she asked him to remember the coordinates so they wouldn't get lost. Although reaching the exit was a good thing, the chance of finding other teams also increased. Mo-hyuk remembered that Karu had told them not to stay on the same floor for more than one day. This meant they would have 11 hours to move to another place. Looking at the stairs, Mo-hyuk asked if the time would reset if they went up. Confirming the information, So-young wanted to stay as long as possible on good floors for hunting. Despite being curious about the other floors, Mo-hyuk found hunting the lizard soldiers quite attractive. So-young then brought a recommendation, to go to another floor after sleeping, suggesting that they rest for 6 hours. Since they would have only 5 hours left, the protagonist asked if they would be able to clear the remaining area in that time. He with his claws and she with her sword agreed to the plan. Thus they advanced confidently. Subtracting the 13 hours spent, as well as the time they would sleep, they would have 5 hours. Remembering how they had defeated about 10 monsters per hour, Mo-hyuk did a basic calculation and believed they would get 40 cores based on the drop rate, which would make them grow immensely. Laughing wickedly to the point of scaring So-young, they continued to advance. 5 hours later, the duo arrived at a castle staircase. Yawning from being tired, Mo-hyuk asked if they had overdone it. So-young was even surprised as they had hunted for 18 hours straight. Still, Mo-hyuk thought it had been worth it. Having collected 86 tokens, the duo had 86,000 points. He had even obtained many cores, accelerating his growth. Opening his stats, which were at rank 7, Mo-hyuk observed them. His strength had reached 65%, stamina 40%, agility 30%, toughness 31%, while his magic power was stagnant at 15%. Mo-hyuk believed that if they continued at the current pace, the next day all his stats, except for magic power, would reach rank 6 when he used the charge ability. Although it only lasted 5 minutes, with it he wouldn't lose to anyone. This made him believe even more that choosing such claws as a weapon and the jewel lizard's camouflage as a skill had been the right choices. Avoiding revealing the truth to So-young, Mo-hyuk knew he needed to make her not notice his accelerated growth. Seeing the boy look at her, So-young warned him, "Look ahead. You never know when you'll run into someone. There might be powerful monsters too. With Mohyuk heading towards the staircase, they reached the 4th floor of the tower, finding tracks in an abandoned mine. So-young found that floor strange, but for Mohyuk it seemed perfect for sleeping. Looking around, Mohyuk showed that there were several things scattered around, objects they could use to make a shelter. So-young, however, thought that something big enough to hide them would look suspicious. Realizing she was right, Mohyuk asked if they could make a hole. Confused, she asked what kind of hole he was talking about. Mohyuk explained that there were many soldiers who dug trenches for ambushes. Since the ground was dirty enough to hide them, maybe they could create one. Surprised that he knew about military matters, So-young showed curiosity, since he should be much older than he looked. Denying it, Mohyuk revealed that he had only seen that on television. With a mocking look at what he had said, she told him to write down the time and start digging, as they would have to move to another floor again in 24 hours. On the watch, Mohyuk realized they were at the same coordinate they had been on the 3rd floor. With that, they could now look for a place to sleep for the necessary time to rest. Curious, So-young asked if he would dig the ground with his claws, since they couldn't dig with the sword she had. Looking at the ground below his feet, Mohyuk thought they would need a shovel to dig it. At that moment, So-young noticed something and ran to him. Placing her hand on Mohyuk's shoulder, she told him to be quiet, crouch down, and look ahead. Mohyuk was scared by her suddenly pulling him, which made her continue pointing while muttering only for him to hear, "Look now, on the left side of the intersection." Mohyuk looked where she was pointing and saw a shadow. Soon, the owner of the shadow appeared, with an iron helmet, a muscular chest piece, and a shovel in his hand that was a fallen dwarf. So-young pulled Mohyuk to hide. The protagonist knew that such dwarves walked in groups, so he questioned why he was alone. Since they couldn't see well because of the darkness, they continued to hide. After observing the tower being for some time and believing he was alone, Mohyuk stated that they could relax. So-young was surprised to see him speak with such firmness. "Can you see in the dark by any chance?" The protagonist replied mysteriously, "A friend gave me good lenses." Mohyuk had never used such lenses because he had never hunted in the dark, but he never thought that Karakra would help him even in that place. Upon seeing the dwarf with a shovel, something they needed, Mohyuk couldn't stand still and drew his claws. He and So-young quickly got up to attack the fallen dwarf before anything else appeared.